Chapter 3191. This attack had not locked onto the Netherworld clone before, so the clone could easily rescue Arthur. But now, after experiencing this attack personally, the Netherworld clone realized how terrifying this attack was. This attack had displayed the power of space to the extreme, and there was even an indescribable rule power. This rule power seemed to have surpassed the rule power that a godly king could control. In other words, this was the application of the laws of heaven and earth. Seeing that the attack was about to land, whether it was the Netherworld clone in front or Arthur behind, they could not move at all. At this moment, an endless amount of Netherworld power surged out from the Netherworld clone's body and turned into a giant Netherworld beast. When this giant beast enveloped the Netherworld clone's body, the oppressive force disappeared and the Netherworld clone quickly retreated. As he retreated, he did not forget to take Arthur with him. The attack landed on the ground with a strong gust of wind, blowing up a lot of smoke and dust. Seeing this scene, the Netherworld clone was even more shocked. He would not have been so surprised even if the previous attack had split the city into two. But such a terrifying attack had been so easily withdrawn. This person's control of power had reached an extreme level. The sword servant, who had put away his sword, looked at the Netherworld clone and slashed again. This attack was still as powerful and terrifying as before, but as soon as the terrifying pressure fell on the Netherworld clone, it was shaken off by the Netherworld power. The Netherworld clone clenched his fist and punched out. The fist aura that flew out seemed to turn into a flying snake and collided with the sword aura. With a loud bang, the sword aura and the flying snake shattered. The Netherworld clone's expression changed slightly. This attack was not an ordinary attack, but he had mastered various combat skills of the Netherworld. His power had reached the limit of this world. The sword servant's gaze turned cold as he slashed again and again. The Netherworld clone used the Netherworld combat skills to block and neutralize the power of each attack. When Arthur saw this scene from behind, he was extremely shocked. Only now did he truly feel the power of the Netherworld clone. Ichian, Xi and Lin, and the others appeared outside the divine residence and looked up at the battle in the sky. Who is that person? How can he be so powerful? Bach said in shock. Did he also come from the godly king's heavenly territory? Ichian shook her head. She knew what kind of existence the Netherworld doppelganger was. If the other party could fight the Netherworld doppelganger to a standstill, one could imagine his combat strength. After all, the power of the Netherworld clone came from the Netherworld. There was only one Netherworld in this world, and it was in existence from the same era as Heaven Crushing. Ichian turned around to look at Heavenbreaker. Heavenbreaker also had a puzzled look in his eyes. Clearly, he didn't know who this person was either. Furthermore, Ichian discovered that the Netherworld clone was actually unable to do anything to the other party. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows. The Netherworld clone, who had used a great deal of strength in each attack, gradually began to feel weak. However, the sword servant acted as if nothing had happened. Those who break the rules die. He put away his saber and stared at the Netherworld clone as he said coldly. Another slash came down. The world suddenly brightened, and the entire city was completely illuminated. Everything in the surroundings seemed to have disappeared. In the eyes of the Netherworld clone, there was only this blade left. His expression was solemn as a soaring serpent appeared behind him. The soaring serpent soared into the sky and collided with the saber ray with a hiss. Boom! Heaven and earth shook, and the entire city seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The saber gleam disappeared, and the soaring serpent turned into energy and dissipated. A blood-curdling scream came from afar. The Netherworld clone turned around abruptly and saw that a second sword servant had appeared in the city for some reason. At this moment, he had already put away his saber and stood upright. In front of him, Arthur's had already fallen into a pool of blood. His eyes were wide open, filled with horror, and the light in his pupils had faded away. One sword servant was already on par with the Netherworld clone, and now there were two of them, one in front and one behind. The two sword servants stared at the Netherworld clone. Swoosh! Heaven Crushing transformed into a longbow with a shake of his body. The heavenly needle appeared on its own and was knocked on the longbow, waiting to absorb energy. One of the sword servants glanced at Heaven Crushing, then his gaze fell on the Netherworld clone again. However, there was confusion in their eyes. Seeing that they had no intention of attacking again, the Netherworld clone asked, "Who are you?" "Sword servants. Rule overseers. Everyone who breaks the rules must die," one of the sword servants said. The Netherworld clone's expression remained unchanged as he asked, "Do you mean that the few of them have broken the rules?" The sword servant nodded. The Netherworld clone's heart skipped a beat. He pointed at himself and asked again, "What about me?" There was confusion in the sword servant's eyes. After a moment, he shook his head. The Netherworld clone's mind immediately turned. He pointed at Cayman, who was not far away, and asked, "What about him?" The sword servant glanced at Cayman. His gaze made Cayman's heart tremble, and he instinctively wanted to retreat. The sword servant shook his head again. What if he becomes stronger? What if he's at the same level as them? The Netherworld clone quickly asked, not intending to give the sword servants any time to consider. "Die," the sword servant said coldly, his eyes flashing with cold killing intent. The Netherworld clone nodded and said, "I understand." The two sword servants glanced at the Netherworld clone again, their eyes still filled with confusion. The next moment, their bodies disappeared into thin air. The entire city was still quiet. The Protoss in the distance did not even dare to breathe loudly. The Netherworld clone turned around to look at the confused butler and asked, "Butler, who else came back with Arthur's this time?" The butler shook his head and said, "I don't know. I didn't get to talk to him. He wanted to take over everything here by force as soon as he arrived." "I overheard their conversation. It seemed that there were several other sons of God," Bach said. "I think there was one called Kagat." The Netherworld clone looked at the butler, who shook his head to indicate that he had never heard of this son of God. "Investigate this matter carefully. See if all of them have met with misfortune," the Netherworld clone instructed. Butler Siluo nodded. "Deal with these bodies, then we'll return to Tree City," the Netherworld clone said. Several people immediately flew out of the divine residence to deal with the bodies. The rest of the matter was left to Butler Siluo. The Netherworld clone immediately led the people back to Tree City. After Heavenbreaker returned with his clone, he went to the divine residence again. Next, he needed to bring back the information that the butler had gathered. Zichun had left the Divine King's celestial territory for a long time. Many of those who had followed him out back then had reached the realm of rank 8. As for rank 9, there had not been a single one so far. It was said that Taijian was about to break through the realm. If he guessed correctly, after Taijian broke through the realm, he would inevitably attract sword servants again. This was because rank 9 was not allowed to exist in this world. Chapter 3192. According to the clues obtained by Butler Siluo, these people had died at about the same time as Arthur's. In other words, sword servant was not a person's name, but a collective term. For example, the heavenly god army left behind by the heavenly god. Everyone in it was a heavenly god army. To verify his guess, the Netherworld clone went to God King Sander and the others to ask if they knew what level of existence a sword servant was. In the end, no one knew the answer, not even the alien races. After the Netherworld clone returned, he called Iron Sword and told him not to break through the realm yet. At the same time, he also told him about the sword servants. When Iron Sword heard that several rank 9 powerhouses had been killed in one move, his face immediately turned pale. "Spread the news. Tell everyone not to break through for the time being. Everything will wait until the real body breaks through," said the Netherworld clone. Naturally, this was a big deal. With these sword servants around, all rank 9 powerhouses would not be able to survive in this world for long. They would only need one move to end a battle. The clone had already broken through to rank 9. Next, the real body only needed to borrow the clone's soul energy to break through, which was relatively easy. In less than a year, the real body broke through to rank 9. The yin and yang forces swirled around his body. Zichun sensed his current state, and a smile appeared on his face. He walked out of the treehouse and looked up at the huge canopy of Jono above. His gaze seemed to penetrate the tree trunk and fall on the vault of heaven. At this time, his soul felt a resistance. It was only after reaching rank 9 because he was already standing at the peak of this world. One more step and he would break the barrier and become a heavenly god. Unfortunately, this barrier was extremely strong and could not be broken by external forces. No matter how great the opportunity was, it was useless. He had already reached the peak of this world. At this time, he felt that he was truly invincible. The Netherworld clone was the first to sense that the real body had broken through, so he immediately transmitted everything that had happened during this period to Zichun. Zichun saw everything transmitted by the clone, and the smile on his face gradually faded. He saw the Sword Servant attack, the battle between the Sword Servant and the Netherworld clone, and the final conversation between the two. Rule Overseer, Zichun murmured, his expression turning solemn. Patian said that those law enforcers didn't make a move against me. It should be related to your identity. It's said that you can conceal yourself from the heavens. The Netherworld clone's voice rang out in Zichun's sea of consciousness. Who in the city is likely to make a breakthrough? Zichun asked. Iron Sword, do you think it's possible for the Sword Servants to be killed? It's hard to say. I still haven't figured out whether the Sword Servant who killed Arthur's was a clone or someone else. If it's a clone, then it's fine. But if it's another person, then if one person can appear without a sound, then wouldn't more people appear? This was the biggest problem. If there were too many Sword Servants and they could not kill them all, it would be too dangerous for everyone. Zichun went to look for Su Mingyao. Regarding this matter, the two of them had to plan carefully. If it really didn't work out, they would have to send them away. Otherwise, if they continued to stay here, they would only die. Su Mingyao obviously already knew about this. She said, the biggest question now is whether those Sword Servants are the heavenly realm's enforcers or the entire world's enforcers. If it's the heavenly realm, then they should only be in charge of this part of the world. Otherwise, they should be in charge of all places. Zichun frowned and said, they can't possibly be everywhere, can they? Otherwise, how could those rank 9s survive? It's not the same. They may have their own duties, Su Mingyao said. Zichun nodded. This made sense. Su Mingyao said, besides sending them back, we have 2 other places we can try. Which 2 places? Zichun asked. One is your world. It belongs to you and is complete. It should be able to avoid the Sword Servant's perception, Su Mingyao said. Zichun's eyes lit up when he heard this. His world was completely under his control. Outsiders did not have his permission unless they broke through the world barrier. That was his private territory. However, even if his world could shield the Sword Servant's perception, there was nothing in his world. Those rank 9s might as well return to the godly monarch's celestial territory rather than stay in his world. As if she had guessed Zichun's thoughts, Su Mingyao continued, the second place is to send them to the Life Star. The Life Star? Zichun was stunned when he heard this. That's right. You're a defiant on the Life Star. The rules there are controlled by you. You've broken through this time. When you return to the Life Star, the world rules there will also be complete. It can be said that the Life Star is your world. Even if those Sword Servants were to monitor it, they probably wouldn't be able to monitor that place. During this period, there was also the Thunder God Temple that they could go to, but Su Mingyao did not say this. This was because it was the same as going to Zichun's world. She believed that those rank 9s would definitely not be willing. Looking at Zichun, who was deep in thought, Su Mingyao said, during this period, we can find a rank 9 to try. Let him stay in this world first, and then go to the Life Star. If the Sword Servants chase him to the Life Star, then we can only take the rank 9 away from here. If he wanted to know more, this was the only way to try. Zichun agreed and went to look for Iron Jian. He could only hope that Iron Jian could help with this kind of thing. After hearing Zichun's intentions, Iron Jian asked, how confident are you? Zichun said, I can't say for sure. Maybe not even 10%, maybe 100%. We can't be sure if we can lure the Sword Servants out, but I'm confident that I can guarantee your safety. All right then, give me another half a year, and I'll be able to break through, Iron Jian said. Zichun nodded. Half a year's time was considered very short for them. In the city, including the natives from the Divine Monarch's celestial territory, everyone stopped cultivating and paid attention to Iron Jian. During this half a year of Iron Jian's cultivation, Zichen discussed some details with the Netherworld clone. These details were nothing more than how to deal with the incoming sword servants. During this period, apart from Heavenbreaker, no one else could be of help. In the 5th month, Iron Jian had already broken through ahead of time. At the moment of the breakthrough, Zichen brought Iron Jian to the outskirts of Tree City. In the sky above a plain, Iron Jian sat cross-legged as he broke through. Zichen and the Netherworld clone stood guard beside him. Heavenbreaker stayed in the distance, ready to transform at any time. After the breakthrough, Iron Jian released a tyrannical aura all around him. This aura did not restrain itself at all and spread into the distance. At the same time, there was also a surge of power that rose into the sky, affecting the power of the natural order. Zichen looked around vigilantly. A ray of light descended from the sky and turned into a figure. He wore a bamboo hat on his head and held a sheathed saber in his hand. Chapter 3193. When he saw the sword servant appear, Zichen's pupil shrank. The Netherworld clone stepped forward in a flash and stopped the sword servant. "We meet again. Have I seen you before?" The sword servant looked the same, confusion written all over his face. They had the same face, but obviously the two were not the same person. Or rather, the sword servant did not have any memories. "What are you doing here?" the Netherworld clone asked. "Those who break the rules die." The sword servant stared at the Netherworld clone and said coldly, "Those who block the rules die." The Netherworld clone took a step back and asked again, "Are you the Heavenly Realm's guardians, or this world's guardians?" The Netherworld clone did not wait for a response. The sword servant unsheathed the long sword in his hand and slashed at the Netherworld clone. Buzz! Netherworld power swirled around his body, breaking free from the binding of the invisible force and throwing a punch. With a loud bang, the fist and sword gleam shattered. Next to the iron sword, a black hole appeared and swallowed the iron sword. Having lost his target, the sword servant was stunned and looked a little confused. The Netherworld clone said with a smile, "Look, the one who broke the rules has left." The sword servant looked around and could no longer see the iron sword. The confusion on his face gradually turned into coldness. "Those who block the rules die." He did not leave and swung his sword again. The Netherworld clone snorted coldly. Netherworld power rose from his body and turned into a huge flying serpent. The flying serpent opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the sword servant. The sword servant's sword slashed the flying serpent but could not completely destroy it. The flying serpent's surface dimmed, but its speed did not slow down at all. A vortex appeared in its mouth and swallowed the sword servant. A light suddenly appeared on the sword servant's body. His body seemed to have teleported and appeared in the distance. In the distance, Zichen's expression changed slightly. In that instant, the sword servant's body seemed to have dissipated into heaven and earth energy and only reassembled when he reappeared. Devour. The Netherworld clone's eyes became extremely cold. The flying serpent transformed from energy, shook its body, and turned into a nether beast. This was a nether beast in its complete form. Countless Netherworld power swirled around its body, and it opened its mouth to swallow the sword servant. The sword servant swung his saber repeatedly. The blade moved in a certain pattern and rose against the sky, leaving streaks of white marks in the air. His attack was extremely powerful enough to kill a rank 9, but it did not break through space. It was clear that the sword servant's understanding of rules had reached the pinnacle. The nether beast's body was riddled with cuts, but it did not slow down at all. It approached the sword servant and swallowed him whole. Countless streaks of netherworld power shot out, sealing off the space and freezing the sword servant's body. The distance between the sword servants and the giant mouth of the nether was slowly closing. He suddenly shouted as a strong light burst out from his body. Countless rule force shot out from his body and flew towards the netherworld's giant maw. Boom, boom, boom. The rumbling sounds of energy explosions rang out continuously. Powerful ripples spread out one after another, causing the sealed space to tremble continuously. When a gap appeared in the sealed space, the sword servant appeared in a flash. The nether beast was still floating in the sky. Its eyes were even colder, and filled with brutality. Die! The sword servant roared angrily, and a light flashed from his body. A second sword servant appeared beside the nether beast. He drew his sword and slashed down. The sword arc slashed out and landed on the nether beast's body, leaving an extremely deep wound. The nether beast was not a physical entity, but a manifestation of energy. However, when the sword landed on it, it was as if a wound was left on it, preventing it from healing. Zichun, who had been standing in the distance, moved in a flash. He used his true speed and arrived in front of the second sword servant. In his hand, he unsheathed the Nine Extremes weapon, which had been unsealed. Heaven and earth suddenly lit up as the blade of the sword fell. With a loud bang, the second sword servant was sent flying backward. At this time, the nether beast's second attack landed. More netherworld power appeared around them, as if forming a sealing territory. This time, the sword servant was trapped firmly and could no longer move. Whoosh! The nether beast swallowed the sword servant. The sealing territory around them disappeared, and the netherworld power dissipated. However, the nether beast did not disappear. The nether clone, who had been controlling the nether beast, suddenly turned pale and spat out a mouthful of blood. The nether beast in front of him exploded with a loud bang, and the sword servant flew out. The sword servant's body was surrounded by rule-bending power. This kind of rule was beyond the control of a rank 9 divine king. It was a rule that had never appeared in heaven and earth. In other words, it was a rule that had never appeared in heaven and earth. His nether beast could not refine these rules and even suffered a backlash, which was why it spat out blood. What happened? Zichun asked aloud. The rules it mastered are indelible. I suffered a backlash. The nether clone said with a serious expression, they can't die. Oh? When Zichun heard this, he frowned again. The sword servant he had sent flying earlier was already charging at him. He did not have time to respond and slashed again. This time, he withdrew the power of Thunder Body and used the power of Yin and Yang. The power of Yin and Yang was surrounded by the rule that he had comprehended. This rule was called destruction. It destroyed everything in the world, including rules. The sword servant in front of him also slashed down with his sword. His sword contained the power that transcended the God King rule. Two completely different blades met in an instant. The Yin and Yang blade, with an indomitable momentum and a unique rule that destroyed the world, swept past the sword servant's sword and then its body. The sword servant's charging body stopped. The powerful rule attack contained in the blade also dissipated in an instant. Swoosh! The next moment, the sword servant's body turned into spots of light and disappeared. Seeing this, the nether clone's expression changed. Obviously, Zichun's rule-breaking rule had the upper hand in this confrontation. After destroying one sword servant, Zichun turned around, and his cold gaze fell on the second sword servant. This sword servant obviously did not know what fear was. He drew his sword and slashed down. This was a sword attack that could kill 10 rank 9 divine kings. It was extremely powerful. However, Zichun's sword attack was even more powerful. As the sword slashed through, the sword servant's body paused and then dissipated between heaven and earth. The disappearance of his body obviously meant that he was not a cultivator and did not have a real body. Perhaps he was a kind of heaven and earth rule. In the distance, Heavenbreaker's eyes lit up when he saw the power of Zichun's 2 sword attacks. Sheathing his sword, Zichun looked at the nether clone and said, "Let's go." According to the original plan, after fighting the sword servants here, they would go to the Life Star next. Previously, he had clearly sensed that his own world could isolate the sword servant's perception. Therefore, he was even more confident about the Life Star. When they returned to Tree City, the beings from the God King's heavenly territory who were waiting here burst into cheers. Through Jono's means, they had already seen the battle in the outside world. Next, Zichun walked into the teleportation portal and disappeared. Chapter 3194. Zichun teleported and appeared in the Tree City on the Life Star. As soon as he arrived, he didn't need to release his aura. The principles of this world could sense his existence. Thus, the earth and heaven were shaken. It seemed like the sky had opened a gap. Countless amounts of earth and heaven energy mixed with the principles of heaven and earth, fell from the sky. Just like the water from the ninth heaven falling into the mortal world, the earth and heaven were shaken hard. Explosions echoed unceasingly. Countless amounts of earth and heaven energy were as thick as a surging sea. Although the principles of heaven and earth had been shaken when he was at the 8th level of God-King realm, it was much weaker compared to this time. At this moment, the same scene happened in many places, including Xing Qin's life star. All creatures lifted their heads to look at the sky, watching the torrential river of energy. Water vapor hit their faces. That water vapor was the pure earth and heaven energy, which made people feel refreshed. Most creatures weren't unfamiliar with this situation. It was because the heaven-defying expert on the life star had grown again. Every time he grew, the principles of heaven and earth would change, and the level of the world would increase. To them, when the earth and heaven were shaken, it was the time for opportunities to appear. This was especially true for those who were stuck in bottlenecks. Amidst such turbulence, they could easily sense the bottleneck and smoothly break through. However, this time, the earth and heaven were shaken, which was different from the previous times. The earth and heaven energy falling from the sky was very pure and of high quality. Many experts who had reached the bottleneck had broken through their realms before they could sense this change. Some broke through one realm, and some broke through several realms consecutively. At this moment, in this turbulent world, all the creatures living on the life stars had a feeling that they had become one with nature. This feeling was like a part of the God soul that had been missing was now complete. If the principle of a life star was compared to a jade slip, this jade slip was broken. As Zi Qin's realm increased, the jade slip was slowly pieced back together. In this world, the 9th level of God King realm was called the 9th level of Ancestor King realm. After reaching this realm, it meant that all the pieces had been pieced back together. At this moment, the level suppression of this world on life stars was gone. As long as there was enough time, the life star would have an endless stream of 9th level of Ancestor King realm experts. Within the City of Trees, Zi Qin, as the heaven-defying cultivator of this world, felt this the most strongly. The moment the mutation ended, the grade of this world changed, becoming the same as the divine realm. Moreover, he did not need to try again. He already knew that this world could stop the sword servants. This was because in this world, as a heavenly defying one, Zi Qin had the final say. No matter how powerful the sword servants were, they could not come to this world to kill people. This was because sword servants did not belong to this world. Taijian's figure flashed and walked out of the Zi Qin world. "Is it okay now?" he asked uncertainly. Zi Qin nodded. "This is a life star. From now on, you will live here. There are so many small planets here. With your competence, you should be able to cross them easily. As long as the rules of the God realm remain in place, you will never be able to return to the God realm. From now on, it's up to you whether you want to develop your own bloodline aristocratic family here or become a rogue cultivator." Taijian nodded. This was a long-term problem, and he needed to consider it carefully. Originally, if the Protoss wanted to come to the Life Star, they only needed to open a passageway. However, now that the world order of the Life Star was complete, it was much more difficult for the Protoss to come to the Life Star. It was even more impossible to casually open a passageway. Of course, the previously constructed teleportation portals were still unaffected. Taijian released his own aura. This was a rank 9 aura. If this were the God realm, this action of his would definitely attract the sword servants, but it did not matter here. After waiting for a full hour and not seeing any sword servants appear, Zi Qin turned back to the City of Trees in the God realm. Next, he would send all the Protoss who were about to break through to rank 9 to the Life Star. As for those below rank 7, there was obviously no problem. Before this, Zi Qin had never thought that sword servants existed in this world. Their strength was beyond imagination, but the people of the God realm did not know of their existence. After moving all the relevant personnel, Zi Qin decided to go to the godly monarch's heavenly territory again. This time, he planned to go to the uppermost level to have a look, which was where Arthur's and the others came from. Before he went to look for Fina to ask about what had happened in the past. Fina said, "I haven't been to the uppermost level, but many of my subordinates have. Their talents are high enough, so there's no point in continuing to stay on the second level. Zichun said, I plan to go there. Do you want to come with me? Fina looked at Zichun in surprise and said, You're going to bring those people out as well? Zichun nodded and said, The life star I'm on has countless planets combined. Its area is no smaller than the God Realm, so it's enough for them to survive. The most important thing is that sword servants have appeared in the God Realm. There are too many uncontrollable factors. If the God Realm attacks the life star one day, with the current power of the life star, we won't be able to resist at all. In the last battle, Zichun had only used 3 cities to block the attack of the foreign tribes. However, the main reason the foreign tribes retreated was that he had killed his way into the depths of the planet. If a heavenly god appeared in the God Realm, he would no longer have an advantage in terms of combat strength. When that happened, if the foreign tribes attacked again, Zichun might not dare to say that he could resist. The most important thing was that if they invaded the life star, what awaited the life star would be a disaster. The reason why he was worried was because the life stars were much better than before. Now, even level 9 divine kings could appear here. Once 9 heavenly gods appeared in the God Realm and regained control, they might be the first to attack the life star. This was because Zichun thought of a word about reincarnation. When one reincarnation ended, everything would start again. If he did not want this to happen, he would have to find more powerhouses to guard the life star. When a great war broke out, the life star would at least have the ability to resist. Besides, Zichun had to guarantee that he would be alive. As long as he was alive, the rules of the life star would be complete. Only then would there be an endless stream of 9th-grade divine kings. Thus, after he had made all the preparations, he should leave. Fina understood Zichun's idea. She said, If so, I will go with you. As long as those existences who went to the upper layer are still alive, I will be able to contact them. The master-servant relationship comes from the depths of the soul. It will never change. All right. This was also the main reason why Zichun had come to find Fina. When he arrived at that world, he would have a shortcut to know the situation there. After they had decided on the matter, Zichun told Su Mingyao about it. Then, he called Heavenbreaker and Fina. The 3 of them headed straight to the God King Heaven Domain. After returning to the second layer, Zichun went to get his contribution token and exchanged it for some resources. Then, he put Fina and Heavenbreaker into his world. Then, he walked into the passage in the center of the city. One could come and leave from that place. Many people in the city saw this scene and were very surprised. Chapter 3195. This was the 3rd layer of the Divine Monarch Celestial Realm. Zichun, Fina, and Heavenbreaker stood there, looking at their surroundings with astonishment on their faces. Up ahead was a barren land. The energy between heaven and earth was in a frenzied state, and there was no vegetation as far as the eye could see. With such a frenzied energy, I'm afraid only cultivators of the 8th rank or higher would be able to survive here. Fina took in everything around her. Let's go and find someone to ask. This damned place is even worse than the one below. Heavenbreaker said exasperatedly. Zichun looked around and said, Then let's just find a random place to go. I sense a familiar aura over there. Fina pointed in a direction. The familiar aura Fina sensed naturally came from those foreign races. The 3 of them flew forward. After flying for several hundred miles, the energy between heaven and earth became even more frenzied. After flying for several dozen miles in the frenzied energy, Zichun saw a huge storm appear up ahead. That storm directly tore through space. A storm that can tear through space? Just how powerful is that? Zichun's expression changed slightly. That storm connected heaven and earth, directly entering the void. Rumbling sounds continuously came from afar. As long as there was such a thing in this area, it would be very difficult to survive. Immediately after, a scene that shocked Zichun appeared. He saw that within the twisting storm, a black shadow actually appeared. It was a huge beast. Its body was huge, like a huge mountain peak. It appeared from the storm and looked around blankly. Perhaps it was an illusion, but Zichun felt that it saw him. Its eyes were cold and filled with cruelty. However, before he could confirm whether that huge beast saw him, a group of people suddenly appeared in front of him. Compared to that huge beast, those people seemed very small. All kinds of energy, light, and powerful attacks landed on the huge beast. Following these attacks, some wounds appeared on the huge beast's body. These wounds were the most superficial and could barely be considered superficial wounds. Many attacks fell like raindrops. Those people flew around the huge beast and attacked it madly. "It seems like we've come to a strange place," Fina said. Zichun nodded. Those who came to this world were at least rank 8s, yet the giant beast was only lightly injured despite being besieged by a group of rank 8s. At this time, the giant beast began to counterattack. The surrounding figures immediately scattered. It could be seen that they were very experienced in dealing with this kind of giant beast. A large number of attacks flew out from the giant beast. Some people were too slow to dodge and were immediately sent flying. At this moment, a person flew out from the back of the team, holding a long saber in his hand, and slashed at the giant beast. This was a 9th-grade cultivator. With one slash, a huge wound appeared on the giant beast's body. Blood gushed out from the wound. The giant beast's attention was attracted by this rank 9. From another direction, another rank 9 flew over and launched an attack at the giant beast. 3 rank 9s and more than 20 rank 8s appeared one after another. It took them an hour to kill the giant beast. After killing the giant beast, they burst into cheers and quickly went forward to dissect the giant beast's body. The storm that appeared earlier still had not dissipated. Suddenly, another tyrannical aura emerged from it. This time, a second giant beast appeared. Seeing this giant beast, the cheering crowd was stunned. Then, their expressions turned ugly. "Let's go stop it. You guys hurry up and pack up," a rank 9s in the team said. Then, he flew forward with his saber. The other 2 rank 9s followed on his left and right. Previously, dozens of them had besieged the giant beast for an hour, and only then did they kill it. Now, another one had appeared. If they wanted to kill it, they would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Now, these 3 rank 9s only dared to say that they could stop it temporarily. They did not dare to hope to kill it at all. "Joshua, come back quickly." Not one, but 2 giant void beasts. A loud shout came from behind. They saw a brawny rank 8 shouting, "Put down the things in your hands and run. If you don't want to die, run faster." The rank 9s named Joshua saw that another giant void beast had appeared in front of them. After this giant beast appeared, his gaze fell on the 3 of them. Being stared at by 2 giant void beasts, the 3 of them felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Their bodies seemed to be out of control. In this state, they would suffer heavy casualties if they faced one beast. Facing 2 of them would only result in complete annihilation. "Let's go." The 3 of them retreated without hesitation. However, having been targeted by the giant void beasts, they might not be able to escape. "Hurry up and run." "Wushi, what are you doing?" The brawny man who had warned them earlier shouted at a rank 8s. "It wasn't easy for us to kill a giant void beast. We can't just leave like this. Even if we leave, we have to take something. Otherwise, this trip will be in vain." The rank 8s named Wu Shi shouted at the brawny man, "You guys go. Don't worry about me." As he spoke, he held his saber and slashed at the giant void beast's corpse. However, his saber could only penetrate 1/10 of the giant void beast's body. "Huh!" Wu Shi shouted. His body released a strong light as he slashed again. This time, the saber went deeper than before. The 2 giant void beasts behind had caught up. Their terrifying aura made Wu Shi tremble all over. The circulation of his power was affected. "I don't believe it." Wu Shi shouted angrily again and slashed with his saber. "Hurry up and run." At this moment, Joshua had already arrived in front of him. He grabbed Wu Shi and flew forward. Suddenly, the top of Joshua's head darkened. A giant void beast had already arrived above him. "Damn it! You go first." Joshua grabbed Wu Shi and threw him into the distance. Wu Shi landed on the ground and shouted at Joshua, "Captain, hurry up and run. We'll catch up later." Joshua shouted. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the giant void beast's attack landed. With a bang, Joshua was sent flying. The giant void beast's body was huge, but its speed was extremely fast. After sending Jasua flying, it immediately dashed forward and attacked Jasua a second time. At this moment, Jasua spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could adjust his aura, the giant void beast's second attack had already arrived. Jasua! Jasua! The other two rank 9s shouted loudly. They were already in despair. In this state, it was already a problem for them to protect themselves, let alone save others. Jasua's vision darkened. The giant void beast's attack had arrived. In the distance, Zichun, who saw this scene, said, "Its combat strength is very strong. It can pose a threat to rank 9s, but it's still much weaker than the sword servants." As he spoke, he was still standing where he was. By the time he finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared from where he was and appeared on the battlefield in front of him. On the battlefield, there was a loud bang and a powerful energy shock wave. Those who were already in despair saw the giant void beast, which should have killed Captain Jasua in one blow, fly backward instead. Chapter 3196. Jasua heard a roar in his ears. Then, a powerful energy surged around him. However, as soon as the energy reached him, it was blocked by an invisible barrier. A person appeared in front of him. He was not tall, but the huge void beast seemed even smaller in front of him. With just one blow, the void beast was sent flying and smashed into the distance. The smoke and dust brought up by the huge body was swept into the storm. Jasua opened his mouth in shock. Similarly, the people in the distance were also shocked. The second void beast noticed the abnormality here. It immediately abandoned the two grade 9 powerhouses and rushed towards Zichun. Zichun's figure flashed. He arrived in front of the void beast and punched it. Everyone only saw a blur before their eyes. That person disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the void beast. They could also teleport like this in other places. However, within the range of the spatial distortion caused by the storm, their speed would be greatly suppressed. It was impossible for them to teleport to this extent. Boom! Another roar came from the sky. It was like a sudden clap of thunder. The second void beast crashed to the ground. Blood kept spurting out of its mouth and nose. Another punch repelled the void beast. Then, these people saw a scene that they would never forget. They saw the black-robed grade 9 powerhouse appear in front of the void beast again and punch it again. Punch after punch. In their eyes, the extremely dangerous void behemoth was currently being punched by his opponent. With each punch, there would be a clap of thunder. Previously, the void beast could still roar a few times. However, after 5 or 6 punches, the void beast stopped roaring. Its huge body also stopped struggling. It was dead. It was smashed to death by a fist. Seeing this, the other void beast was about to escape. Trying to escape? A smile appeared on the corners of Zichun's mouth as his figure flashed and disappeared into thin air. Boom! Another roar came from the distance. The void beast that rose into the air was smashed to the ground. Next, the thunderous fists landed on the void behemoth's body continuously, and the rumbling sounds rang out again. Every time his fist landed, everyone felt their hearts beat violently. The scene before them had completely exceeded their understanding of strength. They had stayed in this world for an extremely long time, so they had naturally seen powerhouses before. However, among all the powerhouses they had seen, there was absolutely no one who could smash a void beast to death with just a fist. Could a 9th grade divine king really achieve this? Or perhaps the other party was a heavenly god who was even more powerful than a 9th grade divine king. The rumbling sounds disappeared as the two void beasts were killed by Zichun. Zichun turned around and looked at the dumbfounded crowd in the distance. He said, "Who can tell me what is going on?" At this moment, these people were all dumbfounded. They also wanted to know what was going on. Jarsel reacted quickly and immediately stepped forward to express his gratitude. Zichun nodded and said, "I just came here. Tell me about the situation of this world." As he spoke, he waved his sleeve and rays of the power of rules fell on the void beasts. These rules wrapped around the void beasts' bodies and disappeared. Jarsel was even more shocked when he saw this scene. Zichun did not know what level of existence this void beast was, but when they fought earlier, He could sense that there was a vast amount of energy in its body. It was extremely valuable. Its body was like a mountain, but it was extremely heavy. Even though it was dead, its body still contained the power of rules. After seeing Zichun take away the two void beasts, everyone was extremely shocked. This was because they did not have the ability to take away the complete void beast bodies. Otherwise, they would not have dissected them earlier. Usually, when danger came, they would directly abandon the spoils of war and flee. "My lord, this is the divine king's celestial domain," Jarsel said. Zichun smiled and said, "I know. Tell me the details. What is the situation of this world? How many cities are there in total?" Although this question was very strange, Jarsel still answered it. "There are no cities in this world," Jarsel said. "No cities?" Zichun could not help but be startled when he heard this. Jarsel sighed and said, "Yes, there are no permanent cities, but there are temporary camps. Those camps are not more than 100 years old." "Why is that?" Zichun asked, puzzled. "There are no mineral veins in this world, nor are there any other strange beasts. There are only the void beasts that my lord saw earlier. They come from the void and are extremely powerful. With these void beasts around, no city can withstand them. Moreover, the void storms are also very terrifying. They are constantly moving within a certain range, so no city can last for 100 years without collapsing. Over time, there are no more cities here, only temporary camps." This world was much crueler than Zichun had imagined. He glanced at the void beast corpse that was being handled by others not far away and said, "This is the basis of your survival?" Jarsel nodded and said, "Yes, the void beasts come from the endless void. Their bodies contain pure energy, and their flesh is comparable to high-purity energy crystals. Even compared to the Divine King's spirit essence in the world below, it is not much different." Zichun was a little surprised. In addition to their flesh, the weapons and armors refined from the void beast's bones are also much higher in quality than the ones in the world below. Zichun continued to ask a few more questions. All the rank 8 and rank 9 martial artists in this world relied on the void beasts to survive. In addition, this world also contained a special kind of energy. This kind of energy could help rank 8 martial artists break through to the next realm and recover the depleted rank 9 martial artists. It was just that the speed was slightly slower. Of course, the void crystals in the void beast's bodies were still the most precious things. They contained a vast amount of energy. Roughly 2 of them could help a rank 8 martial artist break through to rank 9. While Zichun was asking Jarsel questions, the other 2 rank 9 martial artists joined in the line of decomposition. After a while, a rank 9 martial artist came with a void beast crystal the size of a human head. Zichun waved his hand and said, "You killed it, so you don't have to give it to me. Now, take me to your temporary camp." After the battle here ended, Heavenbreaker and Fina came over and followed the team to the camp. As it turned out, the rank 9 martial artists living here gradually noticed the traces of the Void Storm's movement. Before the storm arrived, they would leave in advance. They were considered a mercenary team, and such teams were the most common in this place. They survived by hunting void beasts. This time, they had successfully hunted a void beast. Putting aside the loss of equipment, everyone had gained a lot. According to Jarsel, as long as they were frugal, they would not have to go out in the next few years. Chapter 3197. The so-called campsite was just a place where people gathered. Other than the buildings, there were no corresponding walls. When the storm comes, everything around will turn into nothingness. So there are no walls or real buildings here, Jao explained. Indeed, there were no real buildings. Some of the buildings here were formed by energy and required energy to maintain. Some were spatial objects, such as the hall that Zichun had used the most. This campsite was very lively. There were many people inside in various shops. It looked like a small town, and there was even a tavern. The rest of the team went to deal with their harvest, while Jia Suo invited Zichun and the other 2 for a drink. Zichun nodded in agreement. It was hard for him to refuse such kindness. The tavern was not big, but there were many people. As soon as the door opened, a noisy noise came out. Zichun furrowed his brows slightly at the sight of such an environment. The originally lively tavern instantly quieted down. Everyone looked in Zichun's direction, and their gazes immediately fell on Fei Na. In this place, the goddess tribe was extremely rare, let alone a beauty like Fina. Jia, where did this little beauty come from? I haven't seen her before. A burly man sitting in front of the bar asked directly, his eyes roaming over Fina. Gee, if you don't want to die, shut your mouth. This sir and madam are just here to take a look. Jia looked at the burly man and shouted angrily. The burly man's expression changed slightly, and then he looked at Zichun. He was very familiar with Jia. Jia was not only a rank 9, but his combat strength was also very strong. To be called sir by Jia, he was either a fat sheep or a strong warrior. However, those who could come to this world were obviously not just fat sheep. It was the latter. As a team leader, Jia was quite famous in this campsite. His sir made these people's eyes fall on Zichun, which saved them a lot of trouble. Fina smiled, and the whole tavern seemed to light up. Zichun didn't fuss over the fact that Jia addressed him as madam. He couldn't possibly explain it to Jia patiently. Heavenbreaker harumphed coldly in dissatisfaction. Someone as powerful as him was clearly being ignored again. However, it did not transform into a human form. It had always been in the form of a pet, so it was naturally ignored. As Jiasua's gaze swept across the room, a table immediately became empty. With a flick of his finger, 4 fingernail-sized crystals flew out and landed on the bar counter. This was the most appropriate use of void crystals. No one would be so extravagant as to use them for cultivation. Here, it was the most valuable currency. Soon, 4 cups of wine were served. Although the surroundings were once again filled with discussion, it was much more restrained than before. Heavenbreaker took a sip and spat out the wine. What the hell is this? Is it even drinkable? The surroundings became quiet once more. One had to know that Jia had bought this wine with a crystal. It was the most expensive wine in this place, so it naturally tasted extremely good. Yet, such a pet was directly rejected. This caused many people's expressions to become unnatural, boring. After saying that, Heavenbreaker's figure flashed and disappeared. He had entered Zichun's world. Not bad. Zichun took a sip and said with a faint smile on his face. The people around him clearly heaved a sigh of relief. Have you guys always lived like this in this world? Zichun asked Jia as he put down his cup. What else can we do if we don't live like this? This is how this world is. Jia sighed and said helplessly, if I had known that this world would be like this, I would have stayed in the lower levels and never come up. However, it has been a long time since anyone came up from the lower levels. Perhaps they have already been destroyed by those foreign race bastards. Hearing the words foreign race bastards, Fina raised her eyebrows slightly, and a murderous aura appeared in her eyes. Jia cast a knowing look at Fina. Clearly, he mistakenly thought that Fina also hated those foreign race bastards. Zichun said without batting an eyelid, the environment here is so bad, yet you guys are still fighting? Jia smiled bitterly. We don't fight anymore, but there is still a lot of friction. Speaking of which, everyone here can be considered to be able to get along peacefully. Everyone's common enemy is the void beasts. Our goal is to survive. At this moment, the discussions around them were still very soft and had even stopped. Zichun and Jiasua's conversation had not been deliberately blocked, so everyone had heard it. However, everyone was very puzzled. This was obviously a rank 9 being, yet it sounded like he did not understand this world at all. Sir, I think you are a rank 9, right? Jia could no longer hold back his curiosity and asked directly. Such a respectful tone caused the expressions of many people in the surroundings to change again. That's right. Zichun nodded slightly. He had not drunk any more of that wine after taking that sip. It did not taste good. Sir, you seem to not understand this world at all, Jia said again. Yes, I only arrived yesterday. Zichun's answer made everyone's expressions change. He had only arrived yesterday, yet he was already a rank 9. How is this possible? For a moment, everyone's faces were filled with doubt. Of course, there were also doubts. Zichun did not care about what these people were thinking. He said indifferently, "Actually, I came specifically to find you." "Find us?" Jiasua was stunned when he heard this. The others became extremely vigilant. "The environment here is so bad. Are you willing to leave this world with me?" As soon as these words were said, the crowd was in an uproar. Then, it became silent again. Everyone looked at Zichun in shock. Even the tavern owner had stopped pouring wine at this moment. His eyes were fixed on Zichun. "Sir, what do you mean?" Jiasua found that his throat was a little dry. He took a sip of wine and asked, "Follow me, and I will bring you out of this damned world." Zichun smiled faintly. "I will bring you to a world on the same level as the divine realm. You can even return to the divine realm, but the prerequisite is that you are not afraid of being slaughtered." Everyone's breathing quickened. Their faces were filled with disbelief, but more than that, they were filled with longing. When they came to this world, their lives were worse than death. Every day, they wished they could leave. What does that mean? You will be slaughtered when you return to the divine realm? Although Jiasua was excited, he keenly grasped the problem. "Have you heard of Arthur's?" Zichun asked. "Arthur's? The son of God?" Jiasua was stunned. He teamed up with some other sons of God and brought some people back to the divine realm. Now, they are all dead. Before the crowd could recover from the shocking news that Arthur's had left this world and returned to the divine realm, they heard the news of their deaths. Their expressions became very interesting. Dead? How is this possible? Jiasua could not believe it. Arthur's brought a total of 15 people. Including him, 16 people. That person used a total of 3 blades. Zichun took in everyone's gaze and said, "That's right. That person is much stronger than the Void Beast. He only needed 1 blade to kill the Void Beast." This news was too shocking for the people around them. Chapter 3198. The shrill alarm and the exclamations that reached everyone's ears woke up the shocked people in the tavern. They had no time to think about whether this stranger's words were true or not. At this moment, they flew out of the tavern as if it was a conditioned reflex. Of course, before that, they did not hesitate to gulp down the remaining wine in their cups, leaving the empty cups behind. In the blink of an eye, only Zichun, Fina, and the tavern owner who was standing at the bar counter with an uncertain expression were left. Zichun stood up and looked back at the tavern owner. He said, "Why don't you go?" The tavern owner said, "They won't really fight. I have to make more wine. There will be more people here later." Zichun smiled faintly, turned around, and walked outside. "What you said just now is true?" the tavern owner asked. Zichun turned and threw something to the tavern owner. The tavern owner caught it subconsciously and found that it was a pot of wine. When he looked up again, the other party had already left. "Wine, it's wine. Real wine." The tavern owner's eyes showed an intoxicated expression. Even if the wine was not opened, he could still feel the quality of this wine. It was much better than the wine he brewed. At most, his wine was called wine, not wine. Of course, this did not mean that his skills were not good. It was just that there were no materials to brew wine in this area. It was very noisy outside. Loud shouts could be heard constantly. Zichun and Fina walked outside. At this time, Zichun's spiritual senses sensed that more than 20 people had appeared outside. They were all foreign clans, and all of them were rank 9. They stood outside the station with their backs straight and their backs straight. They were lined up in a formation like soldiers waiting to be inspected. They did not respond to the scolding and cursing. Zichun walked forward. Wherever he passed, an invisible force appeared. No matter if it was rank 8 or rank 9, they could not resist this invisible force and immediately retreated to the sides. During this time, some people wanted to curse. However, after seeing Zichun, they did not know why their hearts suddenly skipped a beat. The curses that just came out of their mouths were forcefully stopped. Zichun walked to the front and saw Jiasua. "My lord." Jiasua walked towards Zichun and said, "They don't seem to be normal." "Don't worry," Zichun said calmly. Zichun stopped at the front while Fina continued forward. At this moment, everyone's attention was on Fina. It was not only because of her beauty. Of course, this was also a huge reason. At the same time, They were also very curious as to why she wanted to go forward. Following that, a shocking scene appeared. As Fina stepped forward, those foreign races who were abnormally powerful in their eyes actually knelt down on one knee in unison, as if they were kowtowing to their king. In an instant, cries of surprise rang out again. Jiasuo also looked at this scene in shock. Then, he looked at Zichen, who was beside him. He realized that this lord was becoming more and more mysterious. After a moment, Fina turned her head to look at Zichen and said, "I'll go look for them. After I find all of them, I'll meet up with you." Zichen nodded and said, "That's good too. Let Heavenbreaker go with you. He can sense my location." Heavenbreaker, who had originally entered Zichen's world, appeared again at this moment and followed Fina very unwillingly. "You're kind, but they're very strong. They won't die even if you die." Heavenbreaker grumbled unhappily, but he still followed Fina. Under the lead of the foreign races, Fina disappeared from everyone's sight. The people in the tavern saw Fina with Zichen and heard his suggestion. At this moment, they all looked at him. Zichen took several steps forward, turned around to look at the crowd behind him and said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Zichen. I'm from the Life Star. You may not have heard of this place, but some of you may know it. However, it doesn't matter. After you've made your choice, you'll have time to learn more about the Life Star. Otherwise, you don't need to learn more about it." Everyone was silent as they listened to Zichen's words. "Aren't you curious why the people from the lower levels haven't come up yet? It's too bad that not all of them died in the battle. I intercepted them and brought them directly to the God world." The shock that this news brought to everyone was undoubtedly enormous, even greater than when they saw the foreign races bowing to that beauty. "My purpose in coming here is to take you away from here. Those at the 8th level can choose to go to the God world, but those at the 9th level must follow me back to the Life Star. As for the reason, the God world is in chaos, and the God world has disappeared. The God world is currently in a state of disorder. However, there is a kind of existence called the Sword Servants. They are extremely strong, and they specialize in killing 9th level experts." Zichen said, "Well, you can watch the specific scene." Zichen waved his hand, and a space appeared in front of them. In that space, images appeared. A man wearing a bamboo hat unsheathed his sword. In an instant, several God race experts were killed. Then, with a second slash, 10 more died. Next, the man in the bamboo hat was fighting with another person. After a while, a strong light appeared and the second man in the bamboo hat appeared, killing the last 9th level expert with a single slash. There were only images of the battle, no sound. Zichen said, "You may not know this person, but you should have heard of his name. His name is Arthur's, and this place is Heavenly God City in the 9th heaven of the God world." "Isn't Arthur's in this world? Why is he in the God world? This can't be fake, right?" A doubtful voice came from the crowd. "Yes, that man is Arthur's. I have seen him once." A 9th level expert in the crowd said, "Even if he looks the same, there is no guarantee that this is true, right? What if it's a scam?" Obviously, there were still people who didn't believe it. Zichen smiled and didn't care about everyone's doubts. Jiasuo said, "I believe that what the Lord said is true." "Why?" "Jiasuo, you are not a careless person," someone asked. "Because just yesterday, the Lord saved my life from the hands of a void beast. Moreover, I saw with my own eyes that the Lord killed 2 void beasts with just his fists. There is no need for such a strong person to deceive us, because if he wants, he can easily slaughter us." What? As soon as this sentence came out, it caused a great shock. They, who lived in this world, knew very well how powerful the void beasts were. Even if several 9th level experts joined forces, they would need to use all their strength to kill one. They had never heard of anyone who could kill a void beast with just his fists. Even the Son of God didn't have this strength. Chapter 3199. If they could leave this place, of course, they would be happy because this world wasn't suitable for living. However, as they had lived in this world for so many years, they had never relaxed their vigilance. One of them said, "There shouldn't be such a good thing in this world, right? What's your purpose?" Zichen noticed that many people had doubts in their eyes. Apparently, They were more skeptical than excited. He chuckled and said, "It's simple. When the Life Star is in danger, I need you guys to fight and protect the Life Star. Of course, the enemies won't be as strong as the Bamboo Hat Man, but I'm sure they will be many level 9 warriors. They could be the God Clan or the Alien Tribes." Alien Tribes? Isn't that man from the Alien Tribe? What's his relationship with you, Master? Asked another one. She's my friend. Naturally, the non-humankind beings she leads are my friends as well. She's not from the alien tribes of the God world. She's from the lower level. The alien tribes of the God world are my enemies. Zichen said, "Of course, it's just my guess. Perhaps they won't attack the Life Star. At that time, you don't need to do anything for me. You will be free." At this moment, a level 8 God warrior walked out. He looked at Zichen and said, "I know the Life Star. It's made of countless planets. There are 2 famous places, the Sky Martial Continent and the War Martial Continent. However, as far as I know, those worlds are low level. They're just suitable for living. Perhaps their conditions are better than this place, but their energy is much weaker than this place." Zichen looked at him and smiled. "So, you belong to a clan of the Starry Sky race?" "That's right." Level 8 nodded. Zichen looked at him and continued, "If so, you should know that the Life Stars have the heaven-defying warriors. Or, are you also a heaven-defying warrior?" The other changed his visage, beaming a forced smile. "What are our heaven-defying warriors? They call themselves that." However, he got it quickly, asking in astonishment, "Could it be?" Zichen nodded with a smile. "It's impossible. That heaven-defying warrior." The other was astounded. He knew the Life Star well. He was also a heaven-defying warrior. He had participated in the operation to encircle the heaven-defying warriors. Of course, this heaven-defying person could be from the previous generation or the generation before that. However, this did not hinder his knowledge and understanding of heaven-defying beings. It was impossible for heaven-defying beings to become gods. Zichen smiled. "Nothing is impossible in this world. The Life Star in the low-level world you mentioned is far beyond your estimation. Yeah, if you know about Life Stars, you can explain to us." He then turned his head and looked at Jasso. "Jasso, I'll leave it to you to inform everyone. If you want to leave with me, pack up your things and we'll go to the next place. If you don't want to leave, you can stay here. The flow of time here is 10 times slower than in the divine world. 1 day here is equivalent to 10 days in the divine world, so I can only give you 2 days." "Yes." Jarso quickly nodded. When Zichen returned to the tavern, he saw that the owner of the tavern was packing up his things. "Where are you going?" Zichen asked. "Of course, I'm going with you, sir," said the tavern owner. "I've had enough of this shabby place." Zichen smiled and said, "To be able to make wine in such a harsh environment, your winemaking skills are very good. Although it's not tasty, it's unique." The tavern owner smiled embarrassedly. "Sir, you're overpraising me. My little tricks are—" Before he could finish, the tavern owner's eyes brightened. Then, he clasped his fists at Zichen sincerely. "Thank you for your advice, sir." Then, the tavern owner didn't pack his things anymore. He immediately walked out of the tavern while shouting, "Deal with the wine. You can exchange the materials for the wine." Currently, the wine didn't taste good because this world didn't have any other materials. However, once they reached the Life Star and had other materials, the wine would taste better. The pure energy in the wine would increase the price several times. Besides, it also meant that the wine would be rare. Obviously, once he left, he wouldn't be able to return. Then, he would definitely be able to sell the wine for a sky-high price. Zichen, who had originally planned to go to the depths of this world, suddenly changed his mind. He called Jasso over and ordered, "Let your men spread the news. Instead of searching for them one by one, it's better to let them come here themselves." Jasua understood Zichen's meaning and immediately went to do it. 2 days obviously didn't count. Zichen asked again, "In this region, which place has the most void beasts?" Jasua guessed Zichen's intention and said, "That place is the depths of this world. The storms there are endless, and the void beasts there are the most." Jasua pointed out the direction to Zichen. Zichen nodded and disappeared. You have full authority to arrange for everyone who comes here. Take this thing. Crush it if there's any danger. I'll sense it. Zichen's voice resounded. A crystal fell from the sky and was caught by Jia Suo. Obviously, this lord didn't want to waste time looking for people, so he was waiting for them to come. This lord should have gone to kill the void beasts. Thinking of how powerful this lord was, Jia Suo observed 3 seconds of silence for those void beasts. Following Jia Suo's instructions, Zichun used world teleportation to go deeper. Soon, he saw a huge storm. Rather than saying that this was the depths of this world, it was better to say that this was the end of the world. It was a dangerous place where almost no one dared to come. Those who could come here were naturally experts among experts. In the storm that connected heaven and earth, void beasts constantly appeared. They bobbed up and down in the storm. Obviously, the terrifying storm couldn't stop them. Soon, they noticed the appearance of Zichen, a human. In an instant, many cold eyes fell on him. Zichen stood outside the storm, quietly looking at these void beasts. The sound coming from the storm became louder and louder. It was as if countless thunderbolts had exploded in the sky. It was deafening. The black holes in the sky continued to expand, extending toward him. Those void beasts were borrowing the power of the storm to move forward at an even faster speed. His black robe fluttered, and his black hair danced wildly in the storm, covering Zichen's eyes. More than a dozen void beasts appeared from the storm, bringing with them an extremely tyrannical might of heaven and earth as they charged toward Zichen. Zichen quietly looked at this scene, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. A ray of light appeared in his hand. The ray of light drew an arc, extending into the distance. It swept past the void beasts and the storm in the distance. The void beasts' bodies were split in the middle. Blood rained down from the sky, sprinkling onto the ground. The storm behind him suddenly disappeared, and Zichen's fluttering robe returned to normal. Chapter 3200. To the void beasts, they were like the overlords of this world. Today was the day of their destruction. A human killed more than a dozen of their kind with just one slash. Of course, this was not the end, but the beginning. After this human sheathed his long saber, he flew forward and rushed into the storm. This storm was a place that humans never dared to step into. It was like a forbidden area, but this common sense was broken today. Next, the end of the void beasts arrived. A ray of light appeared in that person's hand. That was the long saber being unsheathed. Unfortunately, no void beasts could see this action clearly. The ray of light disappeared, and that person stood in the void. The raging storm disappeared, and the sky that was torn apart by the storm was quickly healing. Blood rain fell all around. The corpses of the void beasts fell from the sky and landed with a loud thud. Logically speaking, such a terrifying attack should have consumed a lot of energy. However, he did not seem to have consumed any energy. His expression was normal as he entered another storm. Light appeared in the storm again. The light cut through the storm and destroyed the void beasts inside. The storm disappeared, and that person disappeared again. Angry roars could be heard incessantly. Those were the sounds of fear made by the void beasts. The storm around them became more intense. These void beasts wanted to escape. At this moment, the world suddenly became quiet. The storm seemed to have stopped. A ray of light went straight forward from one edge of the storm to another. As the ray of light penetrated the storm, the rumbling sound was heard again. However, this was no longer the sound of the storm raging, but the sound of it dissipating. The storm disappeared. Countless blood rain fell and gathered into shallow pools. This storm group that had existed for God knows how many years, this place that was called a forbidden area by all the God clan, returned to peace. Zichun, who began to collect the void beasts' corpses, came to a conclusion. The void storm appeared because of the void beasts. It could be said that they could tear space and descend from the void. The storm was created because of their existence. He had gained a lot this time. Although these gains were useless to him, they could help Tyrant and the others to advance quickly if he took them back. After collecting all the corpses, Zichen turned his head and looked into the distance. There was a team of 30 people there. Since they dared to come to this place called a forbidden area, These people were naturally ninth grade. They were wearing excellent equipment. The weapons they held were also made of the hardest bones of the void beasts. At that moment, they stood there motionlessly as if they had been petrified. Morris was the leader of the team this time around. The rank 9s he brought along were all powerhouses. Although it was dangerous to come to this place, they often reaped great rewards. In the entire Divine Monarch Heaven domain, there were no more than 6 teams that dared to come to this place. Morris knew very well that the leaders of 5 teams had already left, and his team was the last one. However, he never thought that he would actually see a person today. The other party came here alone and then flattened this area. Sir, he is looking in our direction. Is he really on our side? A 9th rank said, his voice trembling a bit. The person who spoke was an expert. He had plenty of experience in killing void beasts and had brushed shoulders with death many times. Today, his subordinate who had long disregarded life and death was actually frightened to such an extent. This was the first time he had seen such a scene. I think so. He doesn't have the aura of an alien race, Morris said. He did not realize that his voice was a little dry. There was a clear difference between not being afraid of death and courting death. They could die in battle against void beasts, but they did not wish to be slaughtered by others. Are you all here to hunt void beasts? Zichen looked at the crowd who stood there motionlessly after they appeared and asked. Yes, sir, Morris said respectfully as he clasped his fist and bowed. I'm sorry, but there are no more void beasts here. Zichen said, do you know where else there is such a place? The purpose of this, sir, was obvious. Morris immediately said, if you head north from here, there is a dangerous canyon. There are more void beasts there. More? Zichen's eyes lit up. Yes, we still dare to come to this place. However, if it was that dangerous canyon, we would definitely not dare to set foot there. Morris said, oh, that's good. Zichen looked at Morris and said, there are no more void beasts here. We don't know when they will appear again. Do you all want to come together? Morris was about to shake his head. The level of danger in that place was extremely high. Behind him, many people had already begun to shake their heads. That was a deep-rooted danger. All their actions were subconscious. However, Morris reacted quickly. In the end, he did not shake his head and refuse. His expression changed. He was somewhat tempted. The original danger zone might not be the same for this lord. Perhaps that dangerous place would disappear soon. If they followed this, sir, they might be able to reap some benefits. Let's go. Morris gritted his teeth and nodded. Zichun smiled faintly. Then, he pointed to the north and said, is it this way? Yes. Let's go. Zichun waved his big sleeve. A force descended from the sky and enveloped these rank 9s. They realized that they had lost control of their power in an instant. Their bodies could not move at all. The next moment, their bodies disappeared. Next, they seemed to be traveling through time and space. They released their divine telekinesis but could not sense anything. Although that lord did not have any enmity towards them, the fact that he was able to control them so easily still made them feel shocked. After a short while, things reappeared in front of them. The rumbling sound of the storm was in their ears. This is the perilous canyon? Looking at the scene in front of them, one of the rank 9s exclaimed. The previous area was extremely far away from this perilous canyon. They did not expect to arrive in an instant. At this moment, they had a better understanding of this sir's methods. Just like how he killed those void beasts, it would only take him one stroke to kill them. This is the place you were talking about, right? Zichen looked ahead. There was a huge canyon. The canyon was full of storms. The storms connected heaven and earth. Many void beasts were bobbing up and down in the storm. Compared to the previous place, there were more void beasts here. Sir, this is the place. Morris suppressed the shock in his heart and said respectfully, how many can you deal with at once? Zichen asked again. Morris was stunned. Then, his face revealed a look of ecstasy. He said, 5. It's easy. Whoosh. Zichen's figure disappeared from the spot and entered the storm. Chapter 3201. Looking at the 7 void beasts, Morris shouted, fight! Although he said he could deal with 5 of them, that was because he was being cautious. Now that the void beasts had been directly beaten to this place, they were completely defenseless. Under such circumstances, it was almost no problem for them to deal with 7 of them. At this moment, the void beasts were indeed unable to react. Attacks fell one after another, landing on their vital points. The void beasts began to scream and counterattack. In the storm, Zichan struck with his blade. As the blade light slashed, a part of the storm disappeared, and the void beasts in it were all killed. There were indeed a lot of void beasts here. Zichan kept striking with his blade. During this time, he was still paying attention to the outside world. As long as Morris and the others killed the void beasts, he would not wait for them to decompose them and would send the new void beasts out. After 2 hours, the storm in the canyon returned to normal, and the canyon also returned to its original appearance. Morris and the others stood at the side, panting. Each of them had consumed a lot of energy and had even reached their limits. Usually, this would be the most dangerous time for them. In a place like this, no one dared to put themselves at their limits. But today, they had reached their limits. Not only did they not have the slightest worry, but their faces were full of smiles. Around them, dozens of void beasts' corpses were scattered. According to the distribution of resources, each person had more than one void beast. Such a huge harvest was unprecedented, and it had only been a little more than 2 hours since they started fighting. In addition to their tacit cooperation, the most important reason was that the void beasts that had been sent over by that lord were all a little dazed. They could take advantage of the opportunity to heavily injure them. But even though they were unusually excited, they could not help but feel shocked when they saw the storm in front of them disappear. Their harvest was not small, but that lord's harvest was even greater. However, that lord did not decompose the void beasts' corpses. Instead, he collected all the void beasts he killed. This was something they could not do. From the looks of it, they could barely decompose the void beasts' corpses and take away many important things, such as the flesh and blood, which would be wasted. This was not to say that their spatial spirit rings were not big enough, but because every part of the void beast contained a strong power of law. If there were too many things in the spatial spirit ring, the space inside the ring would become unstable and explode. When Zichun walked over, Morris quickly took out a bottle of wine and handed it to Zichun with both hands. Try this. Zichun waved his hand, and the space in front of him distorted. Wine jugs appeared and flew towards the crowd. Everyone was curious. Could it be that the thing this lord took out was better than theirs? One had to know that the wine they were carrying was the most expensive wine in the world. Naturally, it was also the best. After opening the bottle, they no longer had any doubts. After drinking a mouthful of wine, everyone's eyes lit up. Although they did not know much about wine, they knew that this was definitely not something that could be produced in this world. Drinking a mouthful of this thing meant one less mouthful. Many people quietly put it away after drinking a mouthful, saving it for the next time. Zichun pretended not to see it. He turned to Morris and asked, "Where else can we find large void beasts?" Morris mentioned 2 more places. "I can see that your battle strength is not weak. How many teams like this are there in this area?" Zichun asked. "Originally, there were 6 of us, but now, we're the only one left," Morris said with a sigh. Zichun's heart skipped a beat. He said, "Could it be that one of the 5 is called Arthur's?" "Lord also knows Arthur's?" Morris said in surprise, "Yes, it's him. Unfortunately, he has already left this world. Perhaps he has already returned to the God realm? Since you know him, why didn't you follow him?" Zichun asked again. His expression was calm, without the shock or surprise that Morris had imagined. "It's because of us. Arthur said that he could only take Brother Morris with him. But Brother was worried about us, so he stayed here," a 9th-grade cultivator said. This time, Zichun was surprised. He looked at Arthur's and asked, "Why?" "They are too impatient and only know how to act recklessly. They seem to have strong battle strength, but no matter how strong the battle strength of this world is, even existences like the Son of God will be in danger. If I leave with Arthur's, they will soon be killed by the void beasts," Morris said. "Moreover, I am worried that after I leave, they will be used by people with ulterior motives. Especially those merchants. They are all evil merchants." Morris's words were spoken in an extremely calm manner, without the slightest hint of pretentiousness. The people behind him also smiled, not feeling too touched. From this, one could see that their relationship was indeed very good. Then follow me, Zichen said. Huh. Morris was stunned. All of you follow me. I will take you away, Zichen said again. Where to? Morris asked, puzzled. It's impossible to return to the heavenly realm. I will take you to a world no lower than the heavenly realm, Zichen said. Looking at the still puzzled crowd, Zichen said again. Although Arthur's returned to the heavenly realm successfully, he is dead. This news was undoubtedly shocking. These people's expressions changed drastically again. Zichen silently apologized in his heart, then used the space technique to condense an image again. It was the scene of the battle between the sword servant and Arthur's that day. Exclamations rang out one after another. These people not only recognized Arthur's, but also the other rank 9 existences. In this world, they were all powerhouses. However, such powerhouses could not withstand a single blow from the man in the bamboo hat. Sir, what exactly is going on? Morris looked shocked, as did the others. The heavenly realm is in chaos. The whereabouts of the heavenly gods are unknown. The heavenly realm is the strongest, but you are rank 9. Your combat strength is far beyond those rank 9 existences, so the heavenly realm rules do not allow it. The man in the bamboo hat is called the sword servant. I guess he is a product of the natural order. His combat strength may not be able to fight against the heavenly gods, but killing a rank 9 is easy. In other words, the purpose of their existence is to kill all powerhouses above rank 9. Chapter 3202. The reason why Zichen wanted to recruit Morris personally was that his combat strength was strong enough, and he believed that his status in this world was also very high. If he were to step in, everything would be much smoother. This was also the main reason why he was willing to bring Morris and the others here. Morris had actually rejected Arthur's invitation for the sake of these brothers. This was a complete surprise for Lin Huang. These people had never heard of a life star, which made Zichen feel slightly regretful. However, he did not deliberately and patiently explain. Instead, he said that it was like the heavenly realm, where everything was there except for foreign tribes. Won't the sword servants kill their way to the life star? Morris asked. As long as I'm alive, those sword servants won't be able to reach the life star. Looking at these people's shocked expressions, Zichen said, it's not what you think. I'm not a heavenly god. I'm just a little special. As long as I'm alive, the life star's rules won't be weaker than those of the heavenly realm. In this case, the sword servants won't be able to pass through the rule barrier. Moreover, the sword servants don't supervise all places. For example, here, the sword servants won't be able to come. Morris asked again, Sir, you're willing to take us away. What do you need us to do? Zichen said, you just need to promise me one thing. What is it? When the life star is threatened, you have to protect it and fight against external threats. Morris did not expect Zichen to propose such a condition. He said in surprise, is that it? Yes, that's the condition. Zichen nodded. Morris said, this isn't really a condition. We can't return to the heavenly realm, so we can only live on the life star. Once the life star is threatened, we'll be implicated. So of course, we'll have to fight. It doesn't really matter whether we agree to this condition or not. Zichen smiled and said, you're right, but the life star is very big. There will always be some people who think they can get away with it. What I'm worried about is that they'll flee from one continent to another, and when they finally realize that they have nowhere to run, the life star will have been destroyed beyond recognition. Sir, where does the danger you're talking about come from? It could be the god race from the divine world, or it could be a foreign race from the divine world. It could also be a combination of the two. Morris said in surprise, how is it possible that the two of them are working together? Zichen smiled and said, you'll understand when you get back. Zichen glanced at the corpses of the void beasts and said, you guys recover first. I'll keep these resources for you. You'll have plenty of time to decompose them after we leave this place. Next, we'll take down the void beasts in the last 2 places. From now on, you won't even have the chance to come here. Yes. Naturally, no one had any objections. This way, their gains would be even greater. After the group recovered, they flew to two other places. One of them was the Gobi Plains, and the other was a basin in a huge mountain range. In fact, this basin used to be a mountain range. However, under the ravages of the storm, the mountain range had disappeared and turned into a basin, becoming a paradise for the void beasts. Zichun used an extremely short amount of time to clear these two places. Morris and the others obtained about 5 void beasts each. This was undoubtedly a huge gain. After that, they still did not have time to collect these materials. Instead, they began to gather the others according to Zichun's instructions. During this period, they found out why no one from the lower levels had come. It was not the destruction they had guessed, but the lack of flow. After that, there were few groups of void beasts. Zichun could only walk around and take a look. When he found some teams who had not received the message, he told them to leave quickly. No one would refuse the temptation of leaving, and the price they had to pay was negligible. This was because they still had to fight for survival, even though they lived in such a broken place. In addition, Zichun not only gave them a better place to live, but also gave them hope. That hope was their families. Very few people in the world would be willing to be a wanderer forever. Many people had a stable heart, especially these 9th-grade martial artists who had reached the end of the world. Being able to settle down, have a family, and establish a clan was what they hoped for the most. It was still the same camp when Zichun arrived. At this moment, the scale of the camp had expanded greatly. Many Protoss had gathered here. Many taverns and other shops had opened here. However, the most popular businesses were still the taverns. Finally, they could leave this place where even ghosts could not be seen. Naturally, they wanted to indulge themselves. However, it was somewhat strange that almost all the tavern owners no longer wanted the Void Beast's crystals that were used as a common currency. Instead, they wanted all kinds of materials, such as the most common Void Beast's blood. This blood was one of the main ingredients for brewing wine in this area. During this period, some people vaguely guessed something, so they gathered many teams and went out to hunt Void Beasts. They wanted to take away some of the only specialties of this place before they left. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. During these 3 years, people kept coming here. 3 years was enough for the news to spread and for everyone to come. As for those who did not come, they could only blame it on their bad luck. Over the past 3 years, the camp had expanded again and again. However, no one had seen those mysterious lords. If Morris had not come to this place in the end and personally oversaw it, Joshua, who had first spread the news, would have been torn to shreds by the many experts. After 3 years, Zichun appeared. Behind him were nearly 100 lucky fellows. The reason why they were lucky was because they had caught the last bus. Morris walked forward while Joshua followed him. Although they were both at level 9, the gap between their fighting competence wasn't small. Morris was an existence that could resist the Son of God. "Master, all the people we can find are here," said Morris respectfully. Zichun nodded, his eyes raking through the area. "You know the condition for taking you away, right?" Everybody nodded. That condition wasn't really a condition. There are so many planets in this life star. You can choose any place you want to stay. However, you cannot disturb the natives. I'm the rule supervisor of this life star. If I want to, I can sense everything that happens on this life star. Thus, don't bully them. They're still weak now, but after many years, they will grow up to be existences like you. Don't doubt it. In this life star, we can learn the principles by ourselves. We don't need to awaken the soul altars. The group of experts bowed to him one more time. Chapter 3203. In his line of sight were the foreign tribes that Fina had brought with her. Compared to Zichun, her connection with the foreign tribes was through the soul. Therefore, all the foreign tribes that were still alive in this world had come to Fina. When the Protoss saw the foreign tribes gathered, their expressions changed. Both sides were mortal enemies on the second level. Although they were no longer against each other on this level and fought whenever they met, their relationship was definitely not eased. "From now on, we're allies," Zichun said. "They won't attack you, and you can't take the initiative to make trouble." As soon as he finished speaking, the space distorted and a huge space passage appeared. "Everyone, start entering the passage." As soon as Zichan finished speaking, the powerhouses who had been impatient for a long time immediately flew toward the passage in the air. After everyone had entered, Zichan put away the foreign tribes again. Let's go. Next, Patian continued to open the space. The three of them walked into the space and headed straight for the heavenly realm. 30 years had passed in the heavenly realm. He wondered if Monk and the others had broken through. In the heavenly realm's tree city, a space passage opened under the ancient tree that Jono had transformed into. Zichan and the other two walked out of the space passage. The city was still bustling with people. It could be seen that there had not been many changes in the past 30 years, and no danger had appeared. At this moment, Zichan's voice sounded in the world. All rank 8s can stay in the heavenly realm. If the rank 9s want to see how powerful the sword servants are, you can also come out and have a look. When the rank 8s heard this, they immediately walked toward the passage. The rank 9s smiled sheepishly. What a joke. No one was willing to risk their lives to see something. All rank 8s, pay attention. When you're about to break through to rank 9, report to the city center and then arrange for you to arrive at the Life Star as soon as possible. After Zichan finished speaking, many rank 8s arrived in Tree City, their bodies surging with powerful auras. However, they soon sensed that there were also many powerful rank 8s in this city. Naturally, there were people to receive these rank 8s. Then, Zichan returned to the Life Star. After arriving here, he released all the rank 9's Protoss. As for the rank 9s, Fina was in charge of them. He's back? In the City of Trees on the Life Star, Su Mengyao looked at Zichan with a smile. Zichan smiled and said, "Is everything going well?" "Yes, they're all in the process of development." While Zichan and Su Mengyao were talking about what had happened in the past 30 years, the grade 9 experts were looking around. They soon discovered that the spirit trees in the periphery were all godly king-level existences. This shocked them quite a bit. Those who had some knowledge of life stars, and some experts who had visited life stars were astounded when they saw this. First, tell them about the structure of this world. How they want to develop from here on out is entirely up to them. If you want to stay here, then leave them behind, Zichan said. Next, Su Mengyao arranged the iron swords that had reached the 9th class and told them about the current situation of the world. After they found out that this region was filled with God King-level ancient trees, they became even more astonished. Iron Sword. Are those sword servants really that powerful? During this time, one of the grade 9 experts asked. Many of the grade 9 experts also looked at Iron Sword. Although they had some understanding of the sword servants before coming here, they had not seen them with their own eyes after all, so there were still some doubts in their hearts. Iron Sword snorted when he heard this. Those sword servants exist to kill us. Do you think they're strong or not? Iron Sword's gaze swept across the many grade 9 experts in the field, and he said coldly, "There are so many of us. One sword servant can slaughter us all." "You've seen them with your own eyes?" Someone asked again. Iron Sword said proudly, "Of course, because I'm the first rank 9 other than Sir to see a sword servant and not die. Back then, I also tried to see if a rank 9 sword servant would appear." Everyone was obviously energized, so Iron Sword recounted what had happened back then in full detail. When everyone heard that Iron Sword had attracted a sword servant as soon as he broke through, their expressions changed. After learning that Sir Zichan could actually kill a sword servant, they were even more shocked. Iron Sword said solemnly, "Sir is a defiant, and also the only one in this world who can kill a sword servant. Apart from Sir, even Sir's equally powerful clone can't kill a sword servant. I vaguely heard that sword servants are immortal. In other words, no matter how powerful our combat strength is, it's impossible to kill a sword servant." Looking at everyone's sour expressions, Iron Sword said with a smile, "But don't worry. As long as we don't go to the heavenly realm, the sword servants can't do anything to us. Moreover, this life star is not smaller than the heavenly realm at all. There are countless continents here. Even with everyone's strength, it will take many years to complete a full tour." All right, we've arrived at the border city of Tree City. Next, we'll leave the forest. I'll take you to the continents outside to have a look. From now on, it's up to you where you want to go. In the periphery, there are some specially built trial grounds. There are creatures from alternate time and space inside, which can be used for those low-level cultivators to train. Zichun and Su Mingyao headed to the processing workshops. He placed all the void beast corpses he had obtained in these workshops. Among the rank 9s who came this time, many were natives of the Divine King's celestial realm. Some of them had already come to the workshop and met up with their clansmen. After seeing so many corpses of void behemoths, they were extremely shocked. Next, they needed to dissect these corpses, then sort out the various materials, and finally use these materials to forge weapons or defensive armor. During this period, there would be one or more people managing each step, ensuring that there would be no mistakes. There would also be no cases of embezzlement. As for the void crystals obtained, Zichun specifically instructed that they must be complete and not cut apart. Monk and the others had not broken through yet. Giving them these things would speed up their breakthrough. At the same time, Zichun also instructed those people that if Morris came here to collect his things, they were to give him the void beast resources stored in the warehouse without any additional approval. After dealing with the matters here, Zichun returned to the heavenly realm. He did not know if it was because he had broken through to rank 9, or if it was because the Life Stars rules were complete, but these days, his perception had been significantly enhanced. Vaguely, he had a bad feeling. He could not tell where this feeling came from, but it was like a dark cloud floating above his head. Chapter 3204. With Zichun's current power, he was definitely the strongest below the divine realm. He could sweep away everything and destroy everything he wanted to destroy. However, he still chose to cultivate in seclusion. This was to become stronger. In this aspect, besides using his doppelganger to master more powerful netherworld techniques, there was another way, which was to further control the power of yin and yang heaven-defying rule power. The time spent in seclusion was not long. Time flew quietly. Someone sent the void crystal over. The tyrant and the others started to refine it. They had grown up together with Zichun. Zichun had complete trust in them. One day, the tyrant and the others who were cultivating in seclusion in the city chose to come out and enter the Life Star. This meant that they also wanted to break through and reach the peak of this world. A few months later, the tyrant and the others broke through one after another. Then, they stayed in the Life Star and did not step into the divine realm. The development of Yongding City slowed down a little. Jolina ran from city to city. Every day, countless resources would be added to the Tree City's bill. In this area, Yongding City had become a symbol. In this chaotic situation, it was like a lighthouse in the dark night, attracting many divine clan members. Many forces also came to these cities to develop. As a result, the city became more and more lively, and the population increased. 10,000 years passed quickly. The 10 domains of the divine realm had become history. The divine realm had become a legendary existence. In these 10,000 years, many forces were destroyed and many more rose. There were not many old people who were still alive. Zichun's Tree City still had 3 cities. He had no intention to expand, which meant that he did not have the ambition to dominate this world. However, his Yongding City almost covered the entire 10th domain. However, this area was no longer called the 10th domain. Now, it had a new name, Yongding City. All the cities were called Yongding City. The only difference was the number. In these 10,000 years, Yongding City had never experienced any turmoil. Even if there was, it could be suppressed quickly. Jolina had reached rank 8. It was not that she couldn't break through, but she didn't want to. With her contribution to Tree City, she could exchange it for 10 chances to break through. Since the experts on Zichun's side had all reached level 9 and returned to the Life Star, Jolina had recruited many experts guarding Yongding City. The development of Yongding City was all thanks to Jolina. Zichun was just a figurehead and did not contribute at all. During these 10,000 years, Zichun had been guarding Tree City. The uneasiness in his heart had never been dispelled. However, for 10,000 years, there had been no danger. This made him wonder if it was because of the suppression of the rules. The war in the God world continued for another 10,000 years. During this time, many forces were destroyed. Even Heavenly God City, which used to be the 9th region, was besieged many times. Fortunately, the Heavenly God Legion was there. so no one was able to take the city. 10,000 years had passed, but Sacred King Zenith's team still hadn't been destroyed. Only 3 of the original great powers of the 10th domain remained. At this moment, these 3 level 9 Sacred Kings were discussing the upcoming war. One of the Sacred Kings said, "It has dragged on for too long. Let's start the final battle. At worst, we will lose and stop fighting. If we continue like this, there will be no end." Another Sacred King sighed and said, "Unfortunately, Tree City has great power and we can't use it. Otherwise, not to mention destroying this small area, why can't we even unify the God world?" Sacred King Zenith smiled faintly and said, "Those people are malefactors. They are indeed strong. A single level 8 expert can turn the situation around. However, if we come into contact with them, it will bring about too much karma. The losses outweigh the gains." The first Sacred King sighed and said, "Isn't that so?" "Right, Sacred King Zenith. I wonder what the foreign races are discussing this time?" Sacred King Zenith said, "Who knows? They are always so mysterious. Fortunately, they have no problem fighting." Sacred King Zenith did not know that this time, it was not only the 3 foreign races that had returned, but also all the foreign races that had extended to the God world. These non-humankind representatives had already arrived at the core meeting hall of the non-humankind. In this hall, there were 24 people sitting. Behind these 24 people, there were many people standing. There were only 24 seats, representing the highest status in the foreign races. The other powers, regardless of their size, could only choose to submit. At the very front was an old man. He tapped the table lightly with his finger and said, "Everyone, this battle has gone on for quite some time. It is time to make a choice." The previous discussion disappeared, and the surroundings became quiet. The old man continued, "Then let me begin. 100 origin crystals." Radiance flashed in front of the old man as a pile of sparkling crystals appeared, each of them emitting a dazzling radiance. These were the purest origin crystals in the world, seemingly condensed from laws. If Zichen were here, he would discover that these crystals were even purer than the ones inside the Void Colossi. This was something that was only circulated among the foreign races, perhaps even among the upper echelons. 200, on behalf of Master Victor. A 9th-level alien sitting next to the old man said, 300, Lord Bellica. 500, Lord Ely. The 24 people in the hall began to raise the price continuously, as though they were auctioning something. The number of origin crystals on the seats at the front kept increasing. The rank 9 standing at the back were also incomparably nervous, perhaps even more so than the 24 people in the hall. The old man from before raised the price to 1,000 for the second time. Lord Victor, 1,500. Lord Bellica, 1,700. Lord Ely, 2,000. Lord Victor, 3,000 origin crystals. The rank 9 representative who had been speaking on behalf of Lord Victor produced more origin crystals with a flash of brilliance. There were a total of 3,000 origin crystals in front of him. 3,000 origin crystals, Sir Victor is quite generous. The elder from before smiled after seeing the crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? The other races standing behind Victor's faction were incomparably nervous at this moment. This scene was related to their future development. The others around them also fell silent, but there was a flicker in their eyes. It wasn't clear whether they were communicating with someone or contemplating the gains and losses. This silence lasted for a while. Chapter 3205. This was an auction where origin crystals were used as the currency, but the item being auctioned was extremely important. It was a celestial god slot. There were no longer any celestial gods in the divine realm, but these outsiders were actually auctioning one. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Unfortunately, this news would never spread. Only a limited number of people would know about it. In fact, even this limited number of people would disappear after a while. Origin crystals, on the other hand, were extremely useful to the other races. Every single one of them could create a level 9 God King Broodmother. A single slot was auctioned off for 3,000 origin crystals. This meant that Victor's faction had paid the price of 3,000 level 9 God King Broodmother nests. These 3,000 level 9 God King broodmother nests meant that there would be countless outsiders. The rank 9 outsider representing Victor heaved a sigh of relief. The slot was finally in his hands. Next, the others competed for the second slot. The rank 9 outsider representing Bellico's faction said, "Since that's the case, I will also bid 3,000 on behalf of Lord Bellico." As he spoke, he took out a few more origin crystals and brought the total to 3,000. 3,000 seemed to be the limit, and no one objected. Next, all the factions seemed to have reached a tacit understanding and took out 3,000 origin crystals one after another. A total of 27,000 origin crystals were placed on the table. The origin crystals that the other factions had taken out were all taken away. The names of the 9 heavenly gods had been determined. The old man who had made the first bid did not get a spot for the divine realm, but he was still the one in charge here. He looked at the crowd and said, "The 9 forces have obtained the spots. After all is agreed upon, the 9 sovereigns who occupy the divine nests will voluntarily give up their divine nests. Next, the 15 of us will distribute the origin crystals among ourselves." The 9 factions had used 27,000 origin crystals to obtain 9 slots. The crystals they had paid would be given to the others. This could be considered a form of compensation. All right, those who have taken the resources can make arrangements among yourselves. The old man stood up and announced the end of the meeting. God King Sander was in his temporary camp. There was a map in front of him with several cities marked on it. These were their next targets, and if they were correct, they would be able to conquer them in one go. "Sander, good news?" An excited voice came from outside the door. Sanderson turned around. "Cece, what are you so happy about?" Sandra turned around and saw Cece walk in. Cece was one of the leaders of the 3 forces and had a good relationship with Sandro. "The pagans behind me have agreed to launch a large-scale attack. Moreover, they're sending all of their forces. Tonight, we should have a good gathering. They've prepared the food and drinks. They said that they'll hold a celebration in advance." Cece smiled and said, "Just us?" God King Sandini was quite surprised, because the outsiders on his side hadn't returned yet. But he nodded. This battle still depended on the outsiders. Since they were willing to come out in full force, it couldn't be any better. At night, Sacred King Sander arrived on time. He saw the alien who had been supporting him. He smiled and said, "I just came back, so I didn't want to disturb you." He didn't know if it was just his imagination, but God King Sandini felt that the other party's attitude towards him was a little more respectful. At this time, the food and drinks were already on the table. After 3 rounds of wine, Cece said drunkenly, "After this battle, we'll definitely win a great victory." The other God King nodded. He seemed to be in a good mood. "Actually, the battle is already over," said one of the 3 pagans. "Over?" Cece was stunned. Sander and the other God King were also stunned. "That's right." The alien who had been following Sander all this time turned to God King Sandro and said respectfully, "The battle is over. Stuart greets the heavenly god." The other 2 pagans immediately stood up and bowed respectfully to God King Sandro. Sandro's drunkenness instantly dissipated. He said in surprise, "What do you mean by this? How did I become a heavenly god?" Stuart said respectfully, "You're not now, but you will be soon." "But—" Sandro turned around and looked at his other 2 God Kings. He was shocked to find that they were no longer breathing. They were actually dead. The wine was poisoned. A similar scene played out in several other regions. In the 10 regions of the God realm, 9 people qualified to become heavenly gods had appeared, and God King Sandro was one of them. The teleportation array in Tree City flashed, and Xiao Lina walked out, covered in dust, and went straight to Zichen's residence. She quickly met with Zichen and reported the news she'd heard recently. "The battle is over?" Zichen was stunned when he heard this and was extremely stunned. "Yes. There's been a rumor going around that God King Sandro will become a heavenly god in our region." Zhou Lina said, "I don't know if this is true or false, but one thing is for sure. The battle that has been going on for many years in the God realm has come to an end." "How could this be?" Zichen stood up and frowned. Was this the dark cloud in his heart? "How did the battle end?" Zichen asked. "I'm not sure. It's said that the 2 God Kings who could rival Sandro suddenly declared their allegiance to him. This region was unified and the battle stopped, Jolena said. What about those two? It's said that they left right after the announcement. Left? That's what the news says. I'll go take a look. If a new heavenly god appears, Jolena, you should consider what to do with Yongding City. As soon as Zichen finished speaking, his figure disappeared. Jolena understood Zichen's meaning. Yongding City was her blood, sweat, and tears. It was time for her to make a choice. God King Sandro led his army back to his residence. He felt like he was floating in the air these past few days. Everything had happened too quickly, so quickly that it felt like a dream. He'd become a heavenly god just like that? Although he wasn't a heavenly god yet, he would be soon. Sandro. A voice suddenly rang out. Hearing this voice, Sandro frowned and shouted, "How dare you?" This was a conditioned reflex. During this period of time, everyone was incomparably respectful to him. In addition, this voice sounded very familiar. Among the people he was familiar with, there was no one he didn't dare to punish. But after seeing this person, Sandro came back to his senses. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Lord Zichen, why are you here?" Zichen looked at Sandro with a smile that wasn't a smile and said, "Of course I'm here to congratulate you, Lord Heavenly God." Sandro's heart trembled. He said, "Lord Zichen, what are you saying? I'm just a little god king. How could I become a heavenly god?" "All right, tell me the truth. What's going on?" Chapter 3206. Seeing Zichen's cold expression, Sandor's expression changed. He cursed inwardly at this damned bastard for changing faces faster than one could flip a page. However, his smile didn't falter. "Your Excellency, you're making things difficult for me. I don't know what happened either." "You don't know why the battle stopped?" Zichen's expression became incomparably cold. "Do you really think you've become an Empyrean god?" Sandor immediately smiled bitterly. "Your Excellency, I really don't know. That night, I was still studying the strategic map, thinking of how to take down Ethan's faction in one fell swoop. Who would have thought that the next day, Cece would announce his allegiance to me, and then the two of them would disappear?" "Really?" Zichen frowned as he looked at the other party. Sandor stretched out his hand. "Of course. Every word is true. If your Excellency doesn't believe me, you can search my soul memories. I promise I won't resist." "Then what's the matter with becoming an Empyrean god? Rumor has it that you're going to become an Empyrean god," Zichen said coldly. Sandor smiled awkwardly. "I've become a powerhouse in this region. I can be considered to have unified this place. Of course, your Excellency isn't included. According to some conjecture, perhaps I have an extremely high chance of becoming an Empyrean god. Thus, I first created a little bit of momentum. After all, power itself is a kind of momentum. The battles in other places have also stopped. What's going on?" Zichen asked again. Sandor said, "Your Excellency, you're making things difficult for me. I don't know either. The god realm is so vast. I'm just a mere god king. How can I possibly care about other places?" "Where's that outsider following you?" "He's already left. He took the outsider with him. He said he won't interfere in the god realm's affairs for the time being." Sandor wasn't lying, but he missed out on one thing. When the outsider left, he took a strand of his soul with him. Seeing Sandor's expression, Zichen knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything more out of him. He turned and left. However, after taking just a few steps, he stopped and turned back. Sandor, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, became nervous again. "If you become a heavenly god, how do you plan to deal with me?" Zichen asked. Sandor smiled bitterly. "My lord, don't make things difficult for me. Even if I really become a god, I can't do anything to you. Our region is so prosperous, but we still have to rely on you, my lord." Whoosh! Zichen's figure vanished. Sacred King Zenith let out a long sigh, feeling much more at ease. As for Zichen's previous question, he answered it almost without thinking. He would not think about it now. He would only think about it when that day came. His previous lightheaded state had completely disappeared, and he was completely awake. Zichen's arrival was a wake-up call for him. Fortunately, there was no problem with his response. Otherwise, he would be in trouble. If he was really killed by Zichen, everything he had would be reduced to nothing. After leaving Sanderson's residence, Zichen teleported to the area where the aliens were. The last question Zichen had asked Sanderson was just a casual question. If Sandro really did become an Empyrean god, given their friendship, Sandro would probably slap him to death immediately. Of course, his faction might not be destroyed, especially Yongding City. This was why Zichen had told Jolene to prepare in advance. Yongding City had been built by Jolene single-handedly. It was her blood, sweat, and tears. If a god appeared in the god realm, Zichen would definitely be affected, and his faction would be shaken. However, Yongding City would not be affected. This was because it was already on a large scale, and countless resources were coming in every day. Even if the structure of the god realm changed and a new god appeared, these cities would definitely not be destroyed. No one would go against the resources. At the same time, with Yongding City under his control, he naturally would not harm Jolene. After all, she was an excellent assistant who could manage all the cities in an orderly manner. If Jolene chose to leave, Zichen would agree. He respected Jolene's choice. This time, Zichen chose to teleport. His speed was extremely fast, and there were no battles during this time. As he went deeper, Zichen gradually felt the pressure. It was as if there were some laws that were resisting his arrival. Not long after he went deeper, one after another, Grade 9 aliens appeared and blocked Zichen's path. Looking at these aliens blocking his way, Zichen said indifferently, "If you don't want to die, move aside. I'm here to ask questions, not to kill." "What do you want to know, my lord?" An old voice came from behind. The crowd parted, and an old man walked forward. He looked at Zichen and said respectfully, "Lead greets Lord Zichen. You know me?" Zichen stared at him. In the entire heavenly realm, only Lord Zichen can come to this place, Lead said with a smile. Lida smiled and said, "I wonder why Lord Zichen suddenly came here. Was the heavenly realm's ceasefire you're doing?" Zichen asked coldly. Lead said, "We added fuel to the fire." "Why?" "The war has been going on for too long, and there are too many casualties. If this continues, the heavenly realm's population will dwindle." Zichen sneered. "You care about the heavenly realm's survival? If that news is true, and there really is a heavenly god's law descending, we still need people, don't we?" Lead said, "Moreover, we've suffered too many losses in this war. We can't afford to continue this war." "So you're saying that you made the decision to stop the war and even found suitable candidates?" Zichen's eyes grew colder and colder. Lead said, "My lord, you must be joking. How could we have such authority? We just thought that those people might have a better chance. Perhaps they aren't the strongest in combat, but they're all intelligent. When will the heavenly god's law appear?" Zichen asked again, his eyes fixed on Lead. This old man doesn't know. Otherwise, he would have joined in as well. Lead smiled bitterly. After sensing that Lead's soul fluctuations were normal, Zichen asked again, "Then tell me, do you think it's possible for me to obtain a heavenly god's law fragment?" Smiling bitterly, Lai shook his head and said, "Impossible. Why are you so sure?" "My lord, you're extremely powerful. Once the heavenly god's law appears, it's very likely that you'll be able to obtain it. However, you won't be able to become a heavenly god, because you're not a heavenly god. At most, you'll be able to trap the heavenly god's law fragment and prevent another heavenly god from appearing in the heavenly realm. You won't be able to replace it." Clearly, Lead had guessed what Zichen was thinking. "Why should I trap it? Can't I just give the heavenly god's law fragment to someone else?" Zichen smiled faintly, but a heavenly god still appeared in the god realm. "Actually, my lord, you don't have to worry at all. It's just like how we're enemies of the god realm, but we've existed for generations. Even if a heavenly god appears, I'm sure no one will make things difficult for you, my lord," Lead said. "Why do you say that?" "My lord, your combat strength is unparalleled. You're the strongest person below the heavenly gods. Who wouldn't want to recruit such an expert? I'm afraid that as soon as a heavenly god appears, the heavenly god's emissary will trample all over your faction. Perhaps a heavenly god will personally come to recruit you." Zichen laughed when he heard this and said, "I like what you just said. After saying that, Zichen's figure disappeared. Whoosh! Seeing Zichen disappear, the old man inwardly sighed in relief. Chapter 3207. After Zichen left, the old man's tense nerves finally relaxed. "My lord, why were you so polite to him?" A middle-aged man stepped forward. The old man glared at him and said coldly, "What you really want to say is why I'm afraid of him, right?" The middle-aged man's expression was a bit awkward. He's Zichen, the #1 heaven-defying human below the Empyrean gods. At this stage, no one can stand up to him. To put it bluntly, anyone he kills will die for nothing. The old man snapped. The middle-aged man didn't understand. Even if he's strong, we have many warriors who aren't afraid of death. Could it be? The old man snorted. Being unafraid of death and courting death are two different things. So what if we have many people? He'll kill us all one day. How could that be? The middle-aged man was stunned. As the first heaven-defying human to reach this level, what do you think? Right now, not to mention us, he could even destroy an entire world. So, before the situation is settled, anyone who provokes him will die for nothing. The middle-aged man's face was filled with shock. When they were talking earlier, Zichen had been using his spiritual senses to sense the old man, but he didn't find any fluctuations in the old man's soul. However, Zichen couldn't conclude that the old man was telling the truth based on this. But one thing was for sure. The heavenly realm hadn't had an Empyrean god for more than 20,000 years. Perhaps a new Empyrean god would appear. As for how a new Empyrean god would be born, Zichen didn't know yet. But he was sure that the situation wasn't good. There might be some recruitment, but it was more likely that an Empyrean god would kill him with a single slap. Especially Sander. If he became an Empyrean god, not only would he be killed, the entire tree city might be destroyed. Zichen returned to the tree city and began to gather everyone to discuss the matter of retreating. No matter what, they couldn't stay here any longer. "Zichen, what happened?" Xiao Nuo, who was at the city core, asked. "The heavenly realm is peaceful for now, but there might be even more turmoil in the future. We have to retreat," Zichen said. "Retreat?" Jono couldn't help but be stunned. "That's right, back to the Life Star. Let's go there to develop first. After the God world has settled down, we'll come back here. Or perhaps they will never come again." Naturally, Zichen had the final say in this city, so retreating was only a matter of a word from him. However, the tree city was huge, and there were many gods in it. There were also many people. It wasn't a place where one could just walk away. While they were preparing, Zichen returned to the Life Star. Su Mingyao, Yiqian, Xuelin, and the others were all here. Zichen gathered everyone and informed them of what might have happened in the immortal realm. After hearing this, everyone's expressions changed one after another. If that's the case, then everyone has to retreat, regardless of whether the future heavenly deity has any ill intentions towards us. Su Mingyao said, "Since the appearance of the Empyrean god is still uncertain, we should also participate. If someone becomes a heavenly deity because of us, I don't think they will make things difficult for us." The monk, who had reached the 9th rank, said excitedly, "That's true, but aren't you afraid that the existence who becomes a heavenly deity will bite the hand that feeds him? After all, the number of heavenly deities is limited. We can't let people say that the position of heavenly deity is given to them by someone else every day, right? Moreover, this person isn't even as strong as the heavenly deity," Zichen said. The monk was stunned. He said, "What else can we do? There's no other way. I can only stay in the God world and slowly watch the situation develop." Zichen said, "I'll bring Patian with me. Once a heavenly deity appears in the God world, if we can't stop it, then I'll hurry back." Is running back a solution? Are heavenly deities unable to come to this world? LV Peng said. He had been brought back by Zichen long ago. Now, he had reached the 9th rank and was also the strongest spirit array master on the Life Star. Everyone looked at Zichen. He was the one who knew the most about the rules of the Life Star. Zichen said with a wry smile, "If those sword servants can't come, it'll be difficult for others to come as well. However, if it's a heavenly deity, it doesn't seem to be too difficult." The others were also discouraged. If that was the case, it didn't seem to matter whether they returned to the Life Star or not. This was because if a heavenly deity wanted to kill someone, there seemed to be no one in this world who could stop them. Of course, we have to retreat. At this moment, Xingqian said, if the heavenly deities of the God world really appear, then we have to leave and go to the world that Li Ai mentioned. However, before we leave, we have to greet those heavenly deities and let them know that we've left. This way, for the sake of face, the dignified heavenly deities won't deliberately descend to the lower realm to destroy our forces. In the eyes of a heavenly deity, including a godly king, everyone was like an ant. If a heavenly deity took advantage of the situation to trample on them, it was still acceptable. However, no one had ever gone to the trouble of looking for ants and then specifically killing them. Moreover, a heavenly deity had just appeared in the God world. It was also time to reorganize. A heavenly deity wouldn't be so bored as to deliberately come to a life star and destroy everyone here. This is a good idea. If we can't stop a heavenly deity from appearing in the God world, then the moment they become heavenly deities will be the moment we leave, Zichun said. You have to take us with you. At least we'll be able to do the same. Xingqian said. Me too. Tyrant stood up and said, the seal on Lord Zheng's shield has been completely removed. Now is the time when it's at its strongest. I believe no one can break it. For the time being, nothing had happened, so this issue could not be discussed. Zichun once again returned to Tree City in the God world and supervised everyone's retreat. The teleportation formation lit up continuously. Jolina appeared from it. She was carrying a huge bag on her back. What are you carrying? Zichun asked, puzzled. It seemed that in the God world, everything could be put into a divine ring, unless it was a void beast's material. It's full of divine rings. The divine gems in the divine rings can't fit anymore, Jolina said with a smile. All of them are divine rings? Zichun was extremely shocked when he heard this. Each divine ring could fit many divine rings, and each divine ring could store many resources. Even if there was a limit to the amount of resources that could be stored in a divine ring because of the rules, if Jolina was carrying so many divine rings, wasn't it too much? What are you thinking about? We have almost 1,000 cities. How many resources are there? In the next few days, more resources will be sent here, Jolina said. Why? Zichun was puzzled. These are all your hard work. It's not a big deal. If you all leave, what's the point of me staying here? I'll go back to the Life Star. In the future, it will be more lively than the God world. That's why I'm going there to develop. Chapter 3208. Jolina began to withdraw resources without anyone noticing. After all, the cities still needed to function normally, and each one was extremely popular. If news of this leaked out, it would have a huge impact on the city's popularity. In the Tree City, everyone began to migrate. The mother nest left outside the Tree City also used spatial techniques to leave one after another. The ground was covered with tree roots, forming an inescapable net. At this moment, countless beams of energy passed through the net and headed for Jono. Although this withdrawal would cause a great loss of energy, it was better than being completely wiped out. A similar scene played out in the other two cities. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. No matter how secretive Jolina's actions were, news of her gathering of resources was still leaked to some people. Among them, God King Sandro was the first to learn of this. Perhaps it was the effect of the rumors, but in any case, he became the strongest existence in the region. Ever since Zichun's appearance, God King Sandro had been much more low-key. When he heard this news, he finally smiled. However, he still didn't make it too obvious. At the same time, he denied the idea of his subordinates playing any tricks and even warned them to pretend they didn't know anything. Now that the realm of the gods had yet to change, Zichun was still the strongest expert in this world. If they were to look for trouble with Zichun now, it would be the same as looking for trouble. Clearly, God King Sandro didn't want to die, at least not now. Since Sandro hadn't made any moves in the region, the other factions didn't dare to play any tricks. Everyone turned a blind eye. There were close to 1,000 cities, and it took 3 years just to bring back the resources. During this time, Jolina gave up quite a few. In the end, She no longer had any misgivings and directly sold the cities at a low price. She even contacted Sandro's people. Sandro's people were very cooperative, purchasing many of Yongding's cities at a reasonable price. Although on the surface, Yongding's city belonged to Zichun, it secretly belonged to Sacred King Sandini. Just like that, another year passed, and Jolena returned with a lot of resources. After 4 years, almost all the people in the city had left. The Heaven Martial continent on the Life Star had become very lively, but this place was getting more and more deserted. Jolena was the last to leave, and Zichun saw her off. "When are you leaving?" Jolena asked. "I'm waiting," Zichun said. "Be careful. You too. After you go back, you should rest well and rest until you're fully rejuvenated. In the entire Life Star, if nothing unexpected happens, you can build a city wherever there are people. Well, you can look for Jono. Maybe building a tree city is more meaningful," Zichun said. Jolena's eyes lit up. "Can I?" Zichun nodded and said, "Of course, that's our headquarters." Jolena left the God world with hope. At the moment she stepped into the teleport formation, she seemed to see the entire Life Star and the tree cities. After Jolena left, Heaven Breaker appeared in Zichun's world. Zichun said, "Let's go as well." A beam of light shot out of Heaven Breaker's horn, breaking through space and arriving at Heavenly God City. After entering the city, he went directly to the Heavenly God Manor. Bahi and the others were already waiting there. When Zichun appeared, he asked, "Are you ready?" "My lord, everything is ready," Bahi bowed. "Then let's go." On this day, the Heavenly God Army left the Heavenly God Manor and arrived at the Life Star. The steward stayed behind, leading a portion of the Heavenly God Guards to maintain order. He chose to stay in the city. He didn't want to leave, so he had to wait for the Heavenly God to return. Next, Zichun returned to Yongding City. There was no one left in the city, and the teleportation formation leading to the city had been destroyed long ago. The city was still bustling with activity. Without the haze of war, the God race was very relaxed. Zichun sensed that a storm was about to come. Several days later, a piece of news was sent to Zichun through a secret channel. This was a secret message left behind by Jolena. God King Sandro had left the God King Manor, and he had left in secret. Naturally, this was a coincidence. One of the God King's servants had noticed that the God King had been acting strangely these past few days, so he had sent this message. In the end, after further investigation, he discovered that the God King had already left, leaving behind only a substitute. Zichun knew that the appearance of a heavenly god wasn't a groundless rumor. Thus, he continued to investigate Sandro's whereabouts through this secret channel. In the end, he obtained a clue. Zichun began to search according to this clue, but his search was fruitless. God King Sandro seemed to have vanished into thin air. This caused Zichun's heart to jump. If Sandro went to another space and became a heavenly god, it would be troublesome. He couldn't stop him. By the time Sandro returned and became a heavenly god, he would be in trouble. But Sandro had left without a trace, not leaving behind the slightest trace of him. After thinking it over, Zichun suddenly thought of a method. He went directly to the former 8th realm. The battle there had ended immediately, and one powerhouse had survived. He only needed to inquire about that powerhouse's movements. Sure enough, the powerhouse of this area, Eric, wasn't as cautious and low-key as Sandro. When he left, he even seemed a bit smug. After paying special attention, Zichun easily found the God King's route. Comparing it to Sandro's possible route, Zichun guessed their purpose. The core city. This was the core city of the God realm. It was said that it didn't belong to any realm. It was also where the king ranking and general's ranking were located. Of course, in Zichun's mind, these two rankings were a complete joke. Could it be that they would become heavenly gods there? Zichun didn't hesitate to go to the core city. He'd never been to the core city before. This was his first time here. This was a bustling city. Unlike Zichun's Yongding city in the 10th domain, which was built later, this city was said to have been born at the same time as the realm of the gods. After that, there had never been a battle, and it had lasted until now. Upon entering the city, Zichun sensed that the laws of heaven and earth here were different from those of the outside world, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He settled down here and waited patiently. Half a month later, he saw God King Sandro, who had arrived late. Aside from him, there were 8 other God Kings. Among them was Eric. Chapter 3209. It was obvious that they were in a good mood. After entering the city, they chatted and laughed. In their own words, they were like gods. Zichun watched them enter the city with a smirk. They had no idea that Zichun had come here before them and was even watching them. The 9 of them came from the 9 domains, but none of them were from the 9th domain. In other words, each domain had a god. Only the 9th domain, which was controlled by the Tower Battle God, did not have one. Sandro from the 10th domain had taken his place. Behind them, there were 9 other outsiders. Looking at the expressions of the 9 of them, they were extremely respectful. In the next few days, there was nothing out of the ordinary with them. Zichun kept an eye on them while looking around the city. During this time, he even went to look at the 2 lists that were practically a joke. He then saw that the names on the lists were in a row. Zichun had never heard of those names before. The true experts of the god world had died in the wars of the past 10,000 years. Even if they did not die, they were poisoned to death by the outsiders. Through Zichun's senses, he found that the laws of heaven and earth here were more chaotic than the outside world. It was like a weak zone. It was a vague feeling, and he could not be sure. But sometimes, the feeling was very strong, as if the laws of chaos could explode at any time and turn the city into nothingness. As for why he felt this, Zichun could not explain it. One day, Zichun was drinking in a restaurant. On another street, Sandro and the others were heading south to tour the city. Suddenly, a beam of light appeared in the sky, which turned into a ripple that swept across the city. The noisy city instantly quieted down. Someone at the next table was pouring wine. The wine left the pot and froze in the air, causing the person's movements to freeze. At the same time, Zichun found that he could not move, as if some force was controlling his body. His spiritual will, which had spread out in all directions, also froze. Everything around him was frozen. Was it space freezing? Or time stopping? Zichun was still conscious, but his thoughts were in chaos. Wang. At this moment, the light of yin and yang appeared in his abdomen. Countless precepts surrounded his body. The wine cup in his hand fell onto the table and spun. The wine spilled all over the table. Then, it froze again. The spilled water hung in midair. Zichun had already returned to normal. He turned his head and looked around. This was the first time he had seen time and space stopped. The scene before him was like the most exquisite sculpture in the world. Zichun released his spiritual senses and found that the entire city had become like this. What Zichun didn't know was that it wasn't the entire city, but the entire God realm. The world of the God realm came to a complete standstill. Zichun flew out of the restaurant and looked up at the sky. He didn't know when, but a gap had appeared, and countless rays of light were descending from the gap. Standing within the light was a person. Clearly, he was also not affected by time stop. Zichun seemed to have thought of something. Releasing his spiritual sense, he saw God King Sandini and the others. Their bodies were frozen for a moment, but in the next moment, they were able to move on their own. However, this was only limited to the 9 of them. Behind them, the other 9 were still motionless. They looked around at the abnormality, and their expressions changed. They were shocked. "Come to me." A voice came from in front of them. It was the figure of light descending from the sky. The 9 seemed to have thought of something. Ecstasy appeared on their faces as they flew forward. The figure of light looked at the 9 of them with an indifferent expression. Sandini and the others were extremely excited. Clearly, the chance to become heavenly gods was right in front of them. In the blink of an eye, they arrived in front of the figure of light and looked up, waiting for the descent of the heavenly god's laws. But as soon as they looked up, they saw a figure appear in front of them. This was someone they didn't recognize. It was the 10th person present. The faces of the other 8 were filled with confusion. Only Sandro's expression changed drastically as he cried out involuntarily, "Zichun, it's you." "Zichun?" The other 8 were stunned. Then, their expressions changed. In the heavenly realm today, there were many powerhouses and organizations who didn't know Zichun. However, There were very few who hadn't heard of Zichen's name. There were many legends about Zichen. Among them, the most terrifying was that he could kill sword servants. In the heavenly realm, sword servants were a fleeting existence. They could kill a rank 9 instantly. However, Zichen could kill sword servants instantly. He was fully deserving of the title of number 1 person in the heavenly realm. Right now, time in this city was in a state of absolute standstill. Nobody could move. If they hadn't been pardoned, they wouldn't have been able to move either. But why was Zichen unaffected? Zichen ignored Sandini's exclamation behind him. He didn't care what they were thinking either. Instead, he stared at the figure of light in front of him and asked, "Who are you? How dare you disrespect the emissary?" The other party shouted angrily. His voice was icy cold. Streams of rule-bending power went straight for Zichen. However, as soon as these powers fell on Zichen, they were shattered by the yin and yang forces. The other party's expression changed. He shouted, "How dare you?" Zichen said indifferently, "I'll give you one last chance. Tell me who you are, or you'll die." "You have a death wish," the other party shouted angrily. He pointed a finger at the sky and slashed towards Zichen. The rule-bending power descended from the sky and formed a rule-bending sword. Wherever it passed, the still space was cut open. However, before this attack could land, Zichen unsheathed his saber. It drew an arc and landed on the rule-bending sword. The rule-bending sword split into 2. The figure of light retreated. As he retreated, his body was also split down the middle. Countless rays of light flew out of his body and then gathered again to form a new figure of light. The moment his body took shape, there was no longer any arrogance on his face. Instead, it was filled with shock. "Who are you?" he cried out involuntarily. He couldn't believe it. "That should be my question, right?" Zichen looked at the other party. "My patience is limited. Tell me your background." The other party looked at Zichen, his expression fluctuating. Zichen gripped his saber tightly. Blue veins bulged on the back of his hand. "Here's your stuff." The other party waved his hand, and 9 crystals flew out. The moment he saw the crystals, Zichen felt a powerful force. This force made him feel suffocated and full of threat. This was the law of crystals, a unique law in the immortal realm. It could be said that it was another high-level law. Once these people obtained these crystals, they would become heavenly gods. Chapter 32:10. Seeing that Zichen had changed targets, the silhouette breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Zichen's back as he charged toward the law crystals, a trace of mockery flashing through his eyes. The law crystals were scattered in different directions. After a brief moment of surprise, Sander and the others frantically flew toward the 9 law crystals. They represented heavenly gods. Their charge was not without purpose. The 9 law crystals each exuded a different aura, and these auras corresponded to each of them. In other words, after these law crystals appeared, they were all connected to each of them. Among them, Zichen was naturally the fastest. He teleported in front of a law crystal and reached out to grab it. Swish! He instantly grabbed empty air, as if he and the law crystal were in a different space and time. How could this be? Zichen was stunned. He tried again, but he failed each time. At this moment, he had no time to be surprised. He instantly unsheathed his saber, and a total of 9 saber lights appeared, cutting through the sky and slashing toward the law crystals with heaven-defying power of laws. Swish! Swish! These 9 saber lights could even cut through space, but they could not shatter the law crystals. The two really did not seem to be in the same space. "It's useless," the silhouette in the sky sneered. Zichen turned around, glanced at the other party, and said, "Is that so?" With that, he drew his saber again. This time, he did not destroy the law crystals, but instead slashed at Sander and the others. The 9 people flying toward the law crystals instantly paled and retreated in horror. With their strength, how could they be Zichen's match? But the moment the saber appeared, they felt their bodies being suppressed by an invisible force, and their movements became sluggish. They could only watch in horror as the saber arrived and swept past their bodies. Blood splattered. These god kings on the verge of becoming heavenly gods were killed just like that. There was no surprise at all. Looking at the rain of blood, Zichun turned his head and coldly said to the silhouette, "Find one and I'll kill one. Let's see how many people you can find." The glowing figure looked at Zichun as if it was looking at an idiot. Zichun had a bad feeling and immediately turned his head. He saw that the blood of the 9 people he had killed suddenly turned into balls of light and flew toward the 9 law crystals. While Zichun was still in shock, the glowing figure sneered. "Do you think this is an ordinary law crystal? Let me tell you, this is a law crystal that has long since fused with their souls." The moment the law crystal appeared, they had already become heavenly gods. "Do you think you can stop it? What an idiot." The blood-colored ball of light fused with the law crystal. The law crystal instantly erupted with a strong light, and the aura of a heavenly god surged out. The space around him was still in a state of stillness, and Zichun was still unaffected. However, the auras of the 9 celestial gods made it hard for him to breathe. His expression was extremely ugly. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. The glowing figure laughed. "What? You're still not running? Are you waiting to be killed?" At this moment, the law crystal had already begun to transform, and the first person had already manifested. It was Sandro. After manifesting, Sandro had already regained his consciousness. He smiled at Zichun and said, "Hello, Zichun." Zichun felt a chill in his heart. He knew that he couldn't harm these people now. In other words, Sandro's attitude toward him would change drastically in the future. Zichun retreated. Although he was unwilling, he knew that he had to leave. If he didn't leave now, he would die. "Don't go. Wouldn't it be better for the 2 of us to talk about our dreams?" "Zichun, do you have any dreams?" Sacred King Sandro, or Heavenly God Sandro, spoke. It was clear that he was in a good mood. Strong light erupted from Zichun's body. Countless power of laws enveloped the surroundings, causing the stillness in the space around them to return to normal. Heaven Splitter appeared. After sensing the auras of the heavenly gods, he was given a fright. A beam of light immediately flew out of his horn and tore through space. In the next instant, the 2 of them disappeared. Boom! Before the space where the 2 of them could close up, a huge palm appeared and shattered the space. Heavenly God Sandro appeared beside the shattered space. He glanced at the black hole, and a cold smile appeared on his face. "Zichun, this heavenly god will play with you." Whoosh! Zichun and Heaven Splitter reappeared in the City of Trees. At this moment, the space in the City of Trees was also completely frozen. Zichun didn't have time to guess whether other places were also like this. He immediately flew toward the teleportation array with Heaven Splitter. When they arrived at the teleportation array, the heaven-defying power of laws descended and removed the static state of the teleportation array. Following a burst of strong light, Zichun and Heaven Splitter disappeared. As the 2 of them disappeared, the teleportation array here shattered with a loud boom. This meant that the teleportation array, which had taken many years to construct, had completely disappeared. The path between the divine world and the life star was completely severed. Not long after, in the sky above the City of Trees, a giant palm print descended. This palm print emitted a divine light and surged with a boundless aura as it fell on the City of Trees. The City of Trees, which had already become a framework, completely shattered. Countless ancient trees that had lost their spiritual energy only turned into ashes and disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the 3 cities of trees Zichun had established in the divine world turned into nothingness. This place was once again a land of yellow sand, obliterating all traces of the life star in this world. However, the Yongding city was left behind. Zichun and Heaven Splitter arrived in a void. This was one of the connecting points of the teleportation array. As the 2 of them disappeared, this connecting point also exploded. Now that a heavenly god had reappeared in the divine world, Zichun no longer felt lucky. Everywhere he passed, all the connecting points exploded. This way, it would be even more difficult to reopen the teleportation array. As the connecting points exploded, Zichun appeared in the City of Trees on the Life Star. As soon as he left the teleportation array, it exploded. Rumbling noises reverberated in this giant city. Many experts who lived here sensed the abnormality. They all turned their attention to this place. When they saw Zichun appear, some of them wore strange expressions. "Time is tight. Come to the meeting." Zichun's voice echoed in the sea of consciousness of some important people in the city. After a short while, they arrived at the meeting hall. There were more than 50 people, including Zichun's friends and some of his trusted friends. The divine world has 9 heavenly gods again. Chapter 32:11. Among the 9 great deities, there is Sandro. He is very hostile to me. Of course, the others are not much different. Therefore, I have to go. Next, I will leave this place to you. Zichun looked at everyone and said, "I will go with you." Tyrant and others stood up one after another. Zichun waved his hand and said, "That place may not be safe, so I will not bring too many people this time. Most importantly, this place also needs experts to guard it." Xingchen said, "We will go with you." Zichun said, "We will talk about this later. Now, I will make some simple arrangements. All the major matters here will be decided by Meng Yao. As for the other small matters, everyone can discuss it. Jolina wants to develop the city. Jono, give her some tree spirits." At this time, Jono can also condense a human-form doppelganger. Jono nodded, indicating that he will cooperate with all his strength. "Fina, if there is an enemy invasion, the battle arrangements will depend on you." Zichun looked at Fina and said, this time, he did not plan to bring Fina with him. Fina nodded in response. Next, Zichun briefly explained the other matters. Finally, he began to decide who to bring with him. Tyrant, Zhang Haoyin and others wanted to follow, but Zichun naturally could not bring them. This place needed experts to guard it. Otherwise, if an accident happened, it would be out of control. Zichun would not bring Devil Ape, Tyrant, Zhang Haoyin, Lunghu Sovereign, and the others. Xingchen strongly requested to follow. In the end, Zichun decided to bring 4 people other than Li Ai. They are Xingchen, Lei Ting, Brilliant, and Mingyue. The 4 of them were the people Zichun met on the Star Road. They were once members of the royal family of the ancient race. After everything was arranged, Zichun stood up and said, "It's time to go." Li Ai, Xingchen, and the other 3 entered his world. Zichun said goodbye to his friends one by one. "If that place really holds the secret to becoming an Empyrean god, then I will return the moment I become an Empyrean god." Zichun and Heavenbreaker walked out of the city. Heavenbreaker tore open space, and the 2 of them entered the spatial passageway. Under countless gazes, Zichun left the Life Star. Zichun did not immediately enter the void to search for the coordinates. Instead, he returned to the God world. After arriving in the God realm, he unleashed his aura and called out, "Sandro." His voice exploded like thunder, forming ripples that spread in all directions. This place was at least a few hundred kilometers away from the core city. Sound couldn't travel there at all. However, Zichun didn't seem to know this and shouted again. In the core city, the 9 heavenly deities were standing in front of the figure of light, listening to its orders. However, compared to before, their expressions were a little less respectful. It was because they were already heavenly deities. If they wanted to kill this figure of light, they only needed to think about it. It was because they had mastered the laws of heaven and earth, which was much more powerful than Zichun's saber strike. The God realm will depend on you guys. You can develop your forces, but unless you have something important to do, it's best that you don't leave the God realm. The 9 of them listened patiently. Right at this moment, Sandro's expression flickered, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. Whoosh! His figure disappeared. In the instant that Sandro disappeared from the core city, Zichun sensed a powerful threat and immediately teleported away. Boom! A huge tremor. The place where Zichun had been standing was transformed into a massive black hole. Black turbulence surged, and a hand disappeared. Zichun appeared 10,000 meters away and looked ahead. "Sandro, you've come." "Impudent." Sandro roared in anger as he swept his gaze towards Zichun. The space where Zichun had been standing shattered one after another. It was just a glance, but it was already so powerful. Zichun let out a cry of alarm and teleported away again. "You think you can escape?" A hint of mockery flashed through Sandro's eyes as his gaze followed Zichun's evasive movements. Wherever he went, space would shatter. Zichun let out a series of cries of alarm as he continued to evade. A short while later, Sandro finally felt bored as he looked at the disheveled Zichun. "All right, I've played enough. Little thing, tell me why you've come." Zichun stopped and asked, "How did you know I had something to say?" Sandro's eyes narrowed, and energy began to circulate within them. Zichun hurriedly corrected himself. "How did you know I had something to say?" Sandro laughed loudly with a smug expression. "Who do you think I am? The number one heavenly god of the god realm. How could there be something I don't know? Little guy, if you have something to say, then say it." "I'm leaving," Zichun said. "Leaving? Are you going back to your life star? Go. I'll make the decision. As long as you stay on your life star, I won't kill you." Sandro was still laughing loudly. Zichun didn't say anything this time. Instead, he looked at Sandro. The smile on Sandro's face gradually faded. He narrowed his eyes, and his heavenly god power surged out towards Zichun. Sensing this destructive power, Zichun didn't dodge this time. Instead, he just stood there. The power rushed towards Zichun, then swept past him and enveloped the entire area. "You're not afraid of death?" Sandro's voice was ice cold. "Of course I am, but I don't think you'll kill me," Zichun said. "Why not?" Sandro asked. "You're a heavenly god. Why would you be so calculative with a god king like me?" Zichun said with a smile. "Although this flattery doesn't require much skill, I'll gladly accept it. It seems like every dog has its day. In the past, you were as weak as an ant in front of me. Although you've become arrogant for a while, everything is within my expectations." Sandro didn't try to hide his smugness at all. "You're absolutely right, heavenly god." Zichun nodded again. Sandro said calmly, "Since you're so humble and disrespectful to me, I'll let you off the hook." "Thank you, heavenly god." Zichun cupped his fists in apology, appearing extremely sincere. "You want to go to that place?" Sandro's expression suddenly became serious. "I want to take a look," Zichun said. Sandro said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "It seems like you don't want to be suppressed by me, do you? What, are you going to ask for a path to become a heavenly god and then come back to kill me?" Zichun immediately said, "How could I? You've helped me today, and I can't thank you enough. How could I repay your kindness with enmity? You should know that I, Zichun, am a person who values kindness and kindness greatly." Sandro naturally had a good understanding of Zichun. After all, they were enemies, and it was important for him to understand his enemy's personality. He had used Ben Senlu and the others to suppress Zichun, but now, Zichun was once again bringing those people to his side. "What do you want to know?" Sandro asked. Chapter 32:12. The surrounding space had already been sealed off by Zenith, but this wasn't to prevent Zichun from escaping. Rather, it was because he already knew what Zichun was going to do. "I don't know anything about that place," Zenith said. "I've only heard from Zeus that the secret to becoming an Empyrean god lies there." "Then do you know how Zeus' heavenly god died?" Zichun asked. "I can't think of any power in this world that could kill an Empyrean god," Zenith said. "But you also didn't know what power could create an Empyrean god, did you? What do you think of Zeus' heavenly god's death?" Zichun asked again. "What else could I think of it? That's the business of those Empyrean gods. What does it have to do with me?" Zenith said, "Besides, do you think I was qualified to know such a secret back then?" Zenith continued, "The world only knows that I killed the son of a god, but they don't know that if I didn't come looking for him, someone else would. My goal was the coordinates that the son of a god spoke of, but their goal was to silence him." "Who are they?" Zichun asked. "The 8 Empyrean gods, of course. Even though I don't know how Zeus died, only the other 8 Empyrean gods had the power to kill him." Empyrean god Sandini said, "All I know about that place is its coordinates and the danger it is in. Apart from that, I know nothing else." Zichun nodded. Judging from Zenith's expression, he probably wasn't lying to him. "I remember asking you what you would do to me if you became an Empyrean god?" Zichun asked. A cold smile appeared on Zenith's face. That's right. I didn't think about it back then, but now that I think about it, killing you is naturally the best option. Then why haven't you done it yet? Zichen asked. Aren't you going to run? Let's talk about it after you run, Zenith said. Zichen hesitated for a moment, then said, You won't break the rules, will you? Sandro understood what Zichen was worried about. He said, If the Empyrean gods have no business, they can't leave the god realm as they please. Zichen came to a sudden realization and nodded. The only worry in his heart was relieved. Goodbye. See you again. Heavenbreaker appeared beside Zichen and transformed into a longbow. An arrow pierced through the void. Zichen glanced at Sandro, then followed Heavenbreaker into the void. Empyrean God's spatial seal was something that even Heavenbreaker could break through. Empyrean God Sandro narrowed his eyes slightly, watching as the two left. Whoosh! The sealed space around them disappeared, and Heavenly God Sandro appeared. Sandro, why did you let him go? A heavenly deity asked. Empyrean God Sandro chuckled. It's rare for me to encounter such an interesting opponent. Wouldn't it be boring to just kill him? The 9 heavenly deities were ranked according to the order of their awakening. Sandro was the first to awaken, and he was the first Empyrean god. Speaking of which, this was all thanks to Zichen's saber strike. What do you plan to do now that you're going to restore order in the god realm? Do you want to open another realm? The heavenly deity from before asked. Empyrean god Sandro glanced down at the ground beneath his feet before shaking his head. No, this place is quite good. I'll take it. The 9th realm many years ago, the former 10th realm, was now the first realm of the god realm. 9 new realms would appear in the god realm, and the 10th realm would become an eternal part of history. Perhaps many years later, many people would believe that the god realm had always been ruled by the 9 heavenly deities, and that Empyrean god Sandro and the others had always been Empyrean gods. Zichen and Heavenbreaker entered the void, and Li Ai appeared beside Zichen. She was going to sense the coordinates left behind by the Empyrean god. Why did he let you go? Li Ai asked in confusion. At first, I didn't dare to say for sure. It could be considered a gamble, but I felt like I had a chance of winning. Zichen said he was the adopted son of a heavenly deity, so he knew a few things about the heavenly deity Zeus. Moreover, he's experienced this tumultuous era, so even though he's become a heavenly deity now, he still has some worries in his heart. Worries? He's already a heavenly deity, so what's there to worry about? Li Ai still didn't understand. It's precisely because he's become a heavenly deity that he'll cherish what he has now. Do you think he'll be willing to give up everything one day? Li Ai came to a realization. Could it be that he's worried? Of course. The previous 9 heavenly deities are the best examples. Perhaps he'll be a heavenly deity for a very long time, but no one can guarantee that they won't end up like Pagoda Battle God and the others, never to return, right? Zichen smiled faintly. But why would he trust you? Apart from me, there's no one else he trusts in the god realm. Moreover, only we know the coordinates, right? Add to that my special battle prowess, and I have a very special identity, so perhaps he thinks I have a chance. Zichen said, or perhaps, as the first heavenly deity, he knows some secrets that the other heavenly deities don't. Zichen thought of the first heavenly deity, Leah. At that time, several heavenly deities had voted to decide his fate. In the end, the first heavenly deity had directly rejected it. Although the other heavenly deities were dissatisfied, they still carried out the decision in the end. Regardless of the reason why Sandro had let Zichen go, Zichen had already embarked on the path that had the potential to become a heavenly deity. However, as to what lay beyond those coordinates, Zichen would have to wait until he got there to find out. The process of searching was long, because in Li Ai's memories, there were only those coordinates. There was nothing else. At this moment, Heavenbreaker was constantly tearing open space after space. As he walked through the space-time tunnel, images of space-time appeared one after another. Li Ai sensed the location of those coordinates. Those were things that had already fused into the depths of her soul. In this space-time, it was impossible to calculate a fixed amount of time. This was because they didn't know what path they were walking on. At one moment, they might have walked into the future, and at another moment, they might have returned to the past. Time was unstable here. As they continued forward, Li Ai, who had been shaking her head this entire time, suddenly said, "I seem to have sensed it. We're not far from here." Li Ai sensed the fluctuations from the coordinates. Next, she released her soul and had Heaven Breaker proceed according to her senses. After going down the wrong path again and again, they returned to the right path again and again. Eventually, they arrived at a different space-time. Standing in the space-time tunnel, Heaven Breaker said in a low voice, "I also feel it. We're approaching a strange space-time. The laws there are very unstable. It seems like there's a possibility of breaking through the barrier." Chapter 32:13. The new world was like a fairyland. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed everywhere. Rare beasts danced in the sky. Heaven and earth were filled with spiritual energy. It was extremely dense and of high quality. It was a holy land for cultivation. Zichun looked up at the sky, carefully sensing the rules of heaven and earth here. He found that the rules here were unstable. Sometimes, they were strong as if they were about to break the barrier of the divine realm. Sometimes, they returned to normal. Zichun didn't know what was going on. However, he was sure that this situation would increase his chances of breaking the barrier to become a divine realm expert. Xingchen and the other three appeared next to Zichun. After seeing the environment here, they were both surprised and happy. It's very suitable for cultivation. The only bad thing is that it affects spiritual thoughts, said Xingchen after checking the surroundings. Spiritual thoughts were greatly suppressed in this place. At this moment, with Zichen's competence, the range of his spiritual thoughts was limited to less than 100 miles. It was much worse than when he was on the Life Star. The ground here contains pure spiritual energy. It's like the purest spirit soil. No wonder it can nurture so many plants. Brilliant and Ming, you were very happy to see the flowers and plants around them. What's that? Thunder turned his head to look in the distance. There was a black light. This was a flat area. There were no mountains, so they could see far enough. That black light seemed to be moving toward them. Zichun released his spiritual thoughts. However, he still couldn't see what that black light was. It seemed to be a little far from here. Gradually, the black light reached the range of his spiritual thoughts. Then, it met with his invisible spiritual thoughts. The invisible spiritual thoughts seemed to turn into something tangible in just a blink of an eye. He screamed in fear. The rest of his spiritual thoughts retreated. However, more than half of them disappeared. Don't release your spiritual thoughts. Zichun retracted a small part of his spiritual thoughts and reminded the others loudly. What's that? Asked Xingchen. It's the wind. The black wind. Zichun said in a heavy voice. His expression was solemn. Earlier, he had only seen the general picture. The arrival of the black wind was much more terrifying than the spatial storm he had seen in the God King Heaven domain. That was because the void storm only tore through space, but this black wind was destroying the world. Behind it was a world of nothingness. Zichun had never seen such a terrifying black wind. It could even destroy his spiritual sense. Suddenly, Zichun remembered something. That was the abyss of the final floor of the Lightning Divine Hall. Wind would appear there, and the wind there was so strong that even heavenly deities would not dare to enter. Thinking of that terrifying wind, Zichen's heart tightened. Could it be that the two were the same thing? Just as his expression changed, Xingchen shouted, "The wind is coming this way." The black wind formed a huge storm as it flew over. A rumbling sound resounded throughout the world. The speed of the storm was very fast. As it moved forward, it swallowed everything around it. Strange flowers, grass, and beasts were all sucked into it, becoming a part of the black wind. Xingchen and the rest felt that their bodies were already out of their control, as if they could be swept away by the storm at any time. They were overwhelmed with shock. Lei Ting raised his head to look at the sky, and his expression became solemn. "Go!" Zichen shouted. Energy was released from his body, enveloping the group. Then, he flew towards the distance. It was unknown if it was because of the black storm, but Zichen's world was affected, and he was unable to use the world to teleport. Fortunately, he had mastered extreme speed, and his speed was slightly faster than the storm. However, as Zichen fled, the black storm changed its direction and followed after Zichen. Seeing this scene, Zichen's expression changed greatly. Along the way, he changed his direction again. This time, the black storm did not follow after him. It seemed that the previous scene was merely a coincidence. The black line disappeared into the distance. The group stood there, looking at the traces left behind by the black wind, and were extremely shocked. It was as if a complete world had been directly torn apart. In their line of sight, there was a 10-mile-wide black hole ravine in the distance. How can there be such a terrifying wind? Li Ai was also extremely shocked. Such a holy land for cultivation should not be so uncontrollable. Such a holy land for cultivation was rich in spiritual energy. Of course, such a terrifying wind was abnormal. Look, the traces left behind by the black wind are healing, Lei Ting exclaimed. Everyone looked over and saw that the original black mark was now healing bit by bit. It was the convergence of countless amounts of spiritual energy, and then it turned into land. Immediately, countless spirit flowers bloomed on the land, and some rare beasts appeared out of thin air. It seemed that everything was going to return to its original state. It really is a land where spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathers. This is unbelievable. Zichen was a little surprised. In this way, it would not be long before this place became a holy land for cultivation again. At this moment, Zichen felt something and turned his head to look into the distance. He saw a person appear. That person was emitting divine light, and like a bolt of lightning, he flew directly toward the black hole. It's a member of the God clan. Xingqian also noticed the other person, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Since he saw other people, it was a good opportunity to ask about the structure of this world. At this moment, more members of the God clan appeared. They all flew toward the traces left behind by the black wind. No one knew what they were doing. Zichen led the others and flew forward. First, they needed to know what this place was. Gradually, they got closer to that place. Zichen realized that they seemed to be looking for something. They looked hurried as they shuttled back and forth from place to place. This place was healing. If they did not speed up, they might be buried by the healing spiritual soil. What are they looking for here? Xingqian and the others also noticed this, and they found it very strange. At this moment, there were still some small black winds left below. Whether it was Zichen or the members of the God clan who were looking for something below, none of them released their spiritual senses. They were only looking with their eyes. Zichen stood above for a while, but he did not see anything unusual. At this moment, all the members of the God clan who were looking for something below looked in the same direction at the same time. Zichen, Xingqian, and the others also felt a strange fluctuation. They all felt it and turned to look in the direction of the fluctuation. There was a bright light there. It seemed to be a fragment. Although it was not far away, it could not be seen clearly. It was as if there was a vague energy blocking all of this. It's a fragment of the heaven god's law. Chapter 32:14. The Heavenly God's Law Fragment. These words seemed to have a strange attraction that instantly made those gods go crazy. Those gods were all level 9. When Zichen heard that exclamation, his expression also changed. As the only person in the god realm who had seen the Heavenly God's Law Fragment, he knew very well what it meant. He came to this world to become a heavenly god. He did not expect to see the Heavenly God's Law Fragment as soon as he arrived in this area. This proved that there was a possibility of becoming a heavenly god here. Just as Zichen was thinking about this, a scream suddenly came from the front. In front of the Heavenly God's Law Fragment, a black wind appeared. Some of the gods at the front were swept up by the black wind. His body dissipated in the black wind and turned into nothingness. Damn it! It's the heavenly wind of annihilation. Run! The gods shouted from behind. Some of them quickly retreated, their faces full of fear. However, when some of them retreated, some of them rushed forward. They seemed to have lost their minds. Their eyes were full of madness. They rushed toward the black wind without hesitation, like moths to a flame in the dark night. The divine light around their bodies disappeared in an instant. They seemed to be unaware of this and reached out to grab the Heavenly God's Law Fragment in front of them. The black wind fell on them. The bodies of the gods disappeared and became part of the black wind. When their souls were also destroyed, these gods let out a scream. There was no regret in their eyes. Instead, there was relief. The gods at the back watched this scene silently. There was no sadness in their eyes. Some of them even had envy in their eyes. It seemed that disappearing into the black wind was also a kind of honor. The black wind was disappearing, and the heavenly god's law fragment in it was also disappearing. It turned into spots of light and scattered in all directions. The black hole there immediately turned into solid spiritual soil. Hundreds of flowers grew and bloomed. A few small mutated beasts appeared and jumped around the flowers. Zichun, who saw this scene with his own eyes, was shocked. Annoyed voices came from the front. Some people cursed again and again. They were very emotional. This damned abandoned land. It gives people hope and despair. Let's go. There will be another chance. After all, so many years have passed. This damned place. Are we really going to exhaust everyone to death here? The marks that Black Wind had left had all been restored. Those level 9 warriors of the God Clan hung their heads in low spirits. Some of them seemed to have lost control of their emotions. Zichun's group of 6 people and 1 beast immediately attracted the attention of many people. However, their gazes only swept past Zichun for a moment before landing on Li Ai and the other 2 women. Originally, they were dejected, but their eyes immediately lit up. Then, their breathing became hurried, and greed appeared in their eyes. It was as if they had seen a heavenly deity's law fragment. This was especially true for the few people who had lost control of their emotions earlier. At this moment, they were even more so. If it weren't for the others holding them back, they would have already attacked. Zichun's expression did not change. These people were all rank 9, not even rank 9. Excuse me, where's this place? Zichun came to the front of the crowd and asked the greedy crowd. Everyone's gazes forcibly moved away from the beautiful faces of Li Ai and the other 2 women and landed on Zichun. Their expressions were strange. A middle-aged God Clan member's expression changed a few times. He said, "You don't know where this place is?" Zichun threw out a jug of wine and said, "I'm not sure. Can you tell me more about it?" The middle-aged God Clan member took the jug of wine and his eyes lit up again. The greed that he had been suppressing seemed to be about to go out of control at this moment. He said in a low voice, "Are you new here?" As soon as this sentence came out, it was like throwing a spark into a pile of dry wood. The aura around them instantly became violent, and the breathing of those God Clan members became heavier. However, this time, the targets of greed were not only Li Ai and the other 2 women, but also Zichun and the other 2 women. During this period, they had seen the divine space ring the most. Zichun frowned slightly at the abnormality around them and said, "Yes, we are new here." Boom. As soon as Zichun's voice fell, the aura around them became violent. The God Clan members around them did not hesitate to fly towards Zichun and the others. They were very fast, like streaks of lightning, and a powerful aura surged around them. The space around them was instantly filled with pressure, making it difficult to move. Seeing this scene, Zichun let out a sigh. He had no intention of fighting. He stood in place, and a circle of ripples appeared around him. These ripples were black and shrouded the people he had brought with him. They spread out in all directions. Wherever the ripples passed, the black circle of light expanded and met with those God Clan members who had lost their minds. The black circle of light was like an ordinary black light. It swept past those God Clan members and continued to spread out to a distance of 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet became a dividing line. Within 1,000 feet, those God Clan members who had rushed towards Zichun were all split in 2. This also included the God Clan member who had answered Zichun's question. Outside 1,000 feet, all the God Clan members who had sensed danger and retreated in time were still in shock. Their faces were full of horror. The corpses of their companions on the ground were actually so glaring. Zichun did not look at those corpses. Instead, he looked at those God Clan members 1,000 feet away and said coolly, "Now, I wonder who's willing to answer us. What kind of place is this?" Wherever his gaze passed, all the God Clan members were horrified. The scene previously was too shocking. Its lethality was even greater than the annihilating heavenly wind. After all, the annihilating heavenly wind could be detected in advance and even avoided. But the other party's attack appeared silently. If not for them being relatively far away, they would probably have become corpses too. Looking at the crowd that was horrified to the extreme, Zichen casually looked at a God clan member and said, "You then, tell me what this place is." Your Excellency, this is the Forsaken Land." That person said in horror. "Tell me in detail, what is the Forsaken Land?" Zichen asked again. "It's a place where we can't get out anymore, and no one cares if we live or die. The annihilating heavenly wind here is everywhere. Touching it is certain death," that God clan member said. Zichen asked, "What's with the heavenly god law fragments?" The God clan member sighed and said, "Facing the terrifying annihilating heavenly wind, no one can survive. But every time the annihilating heavenly wind passes, it will also leave behind some heavenly god law fragments. If one is lucky enough to obtain them, they will become a heavenly god and leave this region. However, so many years have passed, but there are only a scant few who have become heavenly gods. Most people have died here. As for us, we barely survived. But before long, we will also be killed by the annihilating heavenly wind." Hearing what the other party said, this confirmed Zichen's guess. This region could indeed become a heavenly god. They did not come to the wrong place. "Since this place is so vile, why did you guys still come?" Zichen asked curiously. Chapter 32:15. Zichen was very surprised to hear the name Zeus Empyrean God again. As Li Ai's father in name, Li Ai's expression changed when he heard his father's name. Zichen asked for the reason and received a very surprising answer. Some of the people here were here because of Zeus Empyrean God, while others were here because of an Empyrean god called Jerilei. Among the 9 Empyrean gods of the god world, Zichen was very sure that there was no Empyrean god called Jerilei. When he thought about what was happening in the god world, Zichen vaguely guessed the reason. The 9 Empyrean gods of the god world weren't eternal. They would appear every once in a while, or when something unexpected happened, a new Empyrean god would take their place. Just like the 9 new Empyrean gods of the god world. Now that the 9 Empyrean gods had appeared, many people in the god world knew this secret. They knew that they were just god kings in the past. Then, when Lienya and the others became Empyrean gods, where did the other people who knew about it go? Why hadn't there been any news of this secret for so many years? After seeing the god world's space-time freeze, Zichen guessed that there was a problem with their memories and that they were erased by a mysterious power of law. This wasn't difficult. Take Zichen, for example. He controlled the law of life stars. As long as he wanted to, he could use the law to slightly change the memories of some people. However, the strength of these people wasn't very high. Besides this, there was also the second reason. Those who knew about it were sent to this abandoned land and left to fend for themselves. This was just like the Lightning Divine Palace back then. When a new cycle of reincarnation began, almost all of those old people had died in battle, and only an extremely small number of guides were able to survive. As for the truth, it had been buried in history. If Zeus Empyrean God really did bring those people here to cover up the truth, it would make sense. However, there was one thing that wasn't right. In Li Ai's memories, Zeus Empyrean God had never come to this place. He only knew a set of coordinates, and his death seemed to be related to this set of coordinates. However, these people were saying that Zeus Empyrean God deliberately lured them here. Why? Zichen guessed that Zeus Heavenly God didn't know what was going on here. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told Li Ai the coordinates. There was no way Sandra would kill the son of the Heavenly God after the death of the Heavenly God for this place. Some mysteries were solved, but new mysteries were also revealed. Zichen decided not to think about it anymore and asked, "Is there a gathering place here?" The God race expert shook his head and said, "The wind of annihilation here has no pattern. It can appear at any time." Zichen nodded. "As long as there is a wind of annihilation, there will be a heavenly god law fragment, right?" "Yes, sir." "Where will you go after becoming an Empyrean god?" Zichen asked again. "It is rumored to be a mysterious region that is connected to this abandoned land. However, Only by becoming a heavenly deity can one sense that region and enter it. After learning what he wanted to know, Zichun took his men and left, leaving the divines behind. After leaving this area, Thunder asked in confusion, "Why didn't you take them with you? They can't survive here anyway. If you take them with you, they will be grateful to you." Zichun said, "Maybe." Looking at Zichun's gloomy mood, Thunder was even more puzzled. Those people were all at level 9. Of course, they were strong. If they were brought to the Life Star, they would be a great help. They've been living in this place for a long time. They don't have the will to fight anymore. Moreover, their minds are twisted. If you take them with you, I'm afraid not many of them will be grateful to you. Most of them have done things that we can't imagine because of their twisted minds. Zichun looked at Thunder and said, "Perhaps some of them can still stick to their hearts, but not many of them. And if one or two of them have a twisted mind, it will be a disaster to the Life Star. When we find them and kill them, the people they have killed can't be revived. Perhaps one of them will be a level 9 expert in the future." On the Life Star, the cultivation had to be done step by step. Thus, when they reached the Earth realm, they would comprehend the principle. As long as they were on the Life Star, when they became King God Realm experts, they would have their own ranks. Moreover, the Life Star today didn't lack experts. Thus, Zichun wouldn't take them with him. Because in this place, the brave ones had died long ago when they couldn't see any hope. The ones who stayed were those who didn't want to die. Even if they were put on the Life Star, when they were in danger, they would think about how to survive instead of fighting with the enemy. They were different from the ones living in the last layer of the King God Heaven territory. Although the environment there was harsh, the level 8 and 9 experts were still fighting for their lives. There were no cities but camps. They could still trade and live a normal life. However, these people weren't normal. They were all crazy and had lost their minds. The facts proved that everything was as Zichun had guessed. In the next place that Zichun went, all the God Clan warriors who saw Li AI and the other two would become crazy like hungry wolves who saw food. If they didn't have the courage to die, Zichun could help them. There was no day or night in this place. There was no sunlight, but it was bright everywhere. The vanishing wind would appear at any time and place without any pattern. Even Zichun didn't dare to touch this vanishing wind. Thus, he joined the army that was searching for the heavenly god's principal fragments. After the vanishing wind disappeared, they would rush into the black gully to search for the heavenly god's principal fragments. Every time, Zichun could see the fragments, but he couldn't get them. That was because the vanishing wind would appear next to the fragments. There was only one vanishing wind, but its power was extraordinary. All the attacks that touched it would shatter instantly. Zichun, who had tried many times to no avail, doubted whether his predecessors could get the heavenly god's principal fragments and become heavenly gods. Zichun, quick, the principal fragments. Li Ai's voice arose. Zichun didn't hesitate and flashed to her side. In front of him, a heavenly god's principal fragment appeared. Around the fragment, the vanishing wind was spinning, and the heavenly god's principal fragment was disappearing. Swoosh! Zichun unsheathed his saber and chopped down. The saber light, like a waterfall, went straight for the vanishing wind in front of him. This slash contained Zichun's strongest rule-bending power, and it was also the slash that could kill a sword servant. However, as the saber light fell on the vanishing wind, it immediately dissipated. Even his strongest move was useless. It seemed that he could only wait until the vanishing wind and then get the principal fragments. However, Zichun knew very well that when the vanishing wind disappeared, the heavenly god's principal fragments would disappear. Therefore, he doubted whether a heavenly god would appear in this world. Or perhaps it was just a desire to live on for the few lucky ones. Chapter 32:16. Seeing the heavenly god's law fragment flying towards him, Zichun was stunned. He was in disbelief. He had originally guessed that no one would become a heavenly god in this place. He did not expect this to happen. The other members of the Shin clan also noticed the abnormality. Hence, many of them looked at Zichun with crazed gazes. Zichun naturally ignored these gazes. He reached out and grabbed the heavenly god's law fragment. At this moment, the heavenly god's law fragment suddenly glowed. It disappeared from his side and went straight behind him. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but the heavenly god's law fragment directly hit a level 9 god and disappeared in a flash. Everyone else saw this as well. Their gazes shifted away from Zichun and landed on the lucky Protoss. Boom! The heavenly god's law fragment entered the body of the lucky god. Immediately, a violent aura erupted from the body of the lucky god. This aura drove the rules of heaven and earth and caused a violent storm. Everyone nearby was blown away. During this time, 2 of them accidentally hit the sky wind of annihilation. They screamed and disappeared in the wind. Under that frightening storm, Zichun and the rest had no choice but to retreat. At this moment, their faces were filled with shock. A heavenly god's law fragment had appeared just like that? A heavenly god was created just like that? They kept retreating, waiting to see what would happen. Unlike the few of them who were obviously rational, these people flew towards the lucky god as if they had gone mad. All kinds of energy attacks fell on the lucky god. However, these attacks were blocked by a tangible power of rules as soon as they reached the lucky god. They could not get close at all. This is a heavenly god? This was the first time Li Ai had been so close to a heavenly god. Although she was the son of a heavenly god, she had never seen her real father. Zichun was also surprised. He said, "A heavenly god can be created with a heavenly god. And so quickly. This is unbelievable." He had seen Sandro and the others become heavenly gods. Now, he was seeing a god become a heavenly god with his own eyes. As the strongest existence in the world, the conditions for a heavenly god to appear were so simple. Of course, it was not easy to obtain a heavenly god's law fragment. The energy in front of him went berserk again, and a tyrannical aura spread out. Within this aura, there was the pressure of a superior being. A burst of complacent laughter rang out between heaven and earth. The vibration of this laughter could resonate with the souls of the Shun clan. Many of the god race people in the surroundings fell to the ground in pain. If the laughter had been any louder, they would have died. This was a heavenly deity. The strongest existence in the world was not a height that could be reached through cultivation. Li Ai was shocked, and so was Zichun. What happened today was obviously a good thing for him, because he could see the hope of becoming a heavenly god. However, the initial condition was a little troublesome. It required the heavenly god's law fragment to automatically break free from the control of the heavenly wind of annihilation. There was no envy or shock in the eyes of Xingchen and Lei Ting. Both of them were frowning as if they were very worried. Brilliant Light and Bright Moon were also expressionless. The heavenly god's aura grew more and more terrifying. Zichun had no choice but to retreat again with his people. The god clan members no longer attacked in a frenzy, but their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. "Ants like you dare to attack a heavenly god?" At this moment, a cold voice came from the mouth of the god clan member who had become a heavenly god. Then, a divine light with the heavenly god's law swept out in all directions. The divine light of the law flew past like the sharpest blade in the world, cutting open the bodies of the god clan members. These god clan members did not even have time to scream before they were killed by the divine light of the law. The other god clan members were terrified. Some immediately knelt on one knee to show their submission, while others turned and ran. Looking at the fleeing god clan members, a hint of sarcasm flashed in the eyes of the newly ascended heavenly god. In front of a heavenly god, you ants still want to run? As the heavenly god finished speaking, he struck out with his palm. The void shook, and a terrifying aura gathered in the sky, turning into a palm print that fell down. The palm print fell from the sky and landed on the fleeing god clan members. Their bodies exploded, turning into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. The fleeing god clan members were all killed in an instant. The remaining god clan members were terrified. At the same time, they felt lucky that they had chosen to submit. Otherwise, they would not have been able to escape death. After killing the fleeing god clan members, the heavenly god's eyes fell on the god clan members who had submitted to him. He said coldly, "Ants like you deserve to submit to a heavenly god? Die." As soon as he said the word die, a strong light flew out and killed all the god clan members who had submitted to him. Zichun's group, who had retreated a long time ago, smiled faintly when they saw this. If they really brought such a person to the Life Star, it would be a total disaster for the Life Star. At this moment, the heavenly god's eyes swept over Zichun. "Let's go." Zichen's figure flashed. A light flew out from his body and landed on the others. Then, he disappeared in the blink of an eye. With Zichen's current strength, he was not qualified to fight against a heavenly god. Hence, he chose to leave without hesitation because he saw the murderous intent in the heavenly god's eyes. Seems like one can become a heavenly god in this area. Li Ai was a little excited. With Zichen's strength, he had the highest chance of obtaining the heavenly god's law fragments. After teleporting away from that area, Zichun continued to search for Black Wind. If it weren't for the twisted personalities of the people here, Zichun would have stopped talking to the heavenly god and asked him some questions, just like how he talked to Sandro. However, the heavenly god couldn't. After 15 minutes, Zichun frowned and turned around. At this moment, a cold voice came from the horizon. "Do you think you can run away?" It was the heavenly god's voice. When the others heard it, their faces changed. That heavenly god had caught up with them. "Go." Without hesitation, Zichun used instant world teleportation again. As soon as he left, a terrifying palm print fell from the sky, landing on the spot where he had been standing. With a loud boom, the ground exploded. A bottomless palm print appeared, and terrifying energy scattered everywhere. Several hundred miles away, Zichen's group appeared. "Why is he chasing us?" Li Ai was puzzled. Previously, many people had retreated far away. Not all of them were dead. Why did the heavenly god want to kill them? Zichen shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Actually, there were two reasons. First, the heavenly god wanted to kill them. Second, it was for Li Ai, Brilliant, and Mingyu. Chapter 32:17. According to his estimation of time, 3 days had already passed. During these 3 days, that lucky heavenly god hadn't given up on pursuing Zichun. Zichun was always able to detect this heavenly god in advance and escape. However, what he didn't understand was why this heavenly god was pursuing him. Moreover, this heavenly god was pursuing him so relentlessly. Was it just for Li Ai and the others? However, wasn't this heavenly god a little too persistent? "Don't run. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I'll still kill you." The heavenly god's voice sounded from behind him again. It was clear that he wouldn't give up until he killed Zichun. Zichun didn't reply. Instead, he continued to teleport away. After a short while, the heavenly god caught up again. "There's no need for you to run with him. My goal is only to kill him. You can stay behind and assist me." This time, he was speaking to Xingqian and the others. "Only kill Zichun? Are you sure you only want to kill me?" Zichen's voice sounded. "How can the words of a heavenly god be false? As long as you obediently accept your death, I promise I won't kill anyone else." The heavenly god's voice sounded from behind him. "I won't kill anyone, male or female." Zichen's brows furrowed again upon hearing this. It seemed that this was far too unusual. Heavenbreaker appeared from Zichen's world. He glanced at the heavenly god behind him, and he said, "Stop running and fight him." "What?" Zichen glared at Heavenbreaker, and he said, "Are you crazy? That's suicide." Heavenbreaker said, "Believe me, although heavenly gods are very terrifying and definitely not on the same level as divine kings, you can still exchange a few blows with this heavenly god." "Really?" Zichen looked at Heavenbreaker. Heavenbreaker didn't reply to Zichen. His figure flashed, and he disappeared again. Zichen gritted his teeth. Being chased like this wasn't a solution. He might as well give it his all. He stopped. Meanwhile, Xingqian and the others retreated several thousand feet away from Zichen. Their speed wasn't far off from that of the heavenly god. Zichen had only just stopped, and the heavenly god had already arrived before Zichen. "You finally understand." The heavenly deity stood in front of Zichen and smiled. "Waiting for death is the only way for you to be liberated." Zichen looked at him and asked, "Why do you want to kill me?" The other party mocked, "Do heavenly gods need a reason to kill people?" Zichen said, "You can't die without knowing why, right?" In the surrounding space, there was a strong pressure. Under this pressure, Ziqin's teleportation technique was suppressed. As if he felt that victory was within his grasp, the celestial god said, "It's useless for you to escape. The moment I became a celestial god, I knew that I had to kill you." Ziqin's expression didn't change. "In other words, I'm the only one?" "Of course," the heavenly deity said. "This heavenly deity is reluctant to kill those beauties. He only wanted to kill Ziqin, and he only found out about this the moment he became a heavenly god." Ziqin frowned, unable to understand why this was the case. Or perhaps it was better to say that he understood, but he didn't dare to make such a guess. This was because he guessed that the appearance of the heavenly god's law fragment was not a coincidence, but a deliberate act to make the heavenly deity kill him. "After killing me, where are you going?" Ziqin asked again. "Where I should go," the heavenly deity said. "Just as the rumors say, there is a special place that only heavenly gods can sense. After I kill you, I will go there." Ziqin nodded and said, "I understand." Saying so, he charged forward. With a flash of light in his hand, the power of yin and yang appeared. Ziqin chose to take the initiative to attack. With the long saber in hand, the light of the lightning body erupted, fusing with the heaven-defying laws of yin and yang into the saber. He unsheathed the saber. He was probably the first god king in history to dare attack a heavenly god. The heavenly deity looked at the charging Ziqin, a disdainful smile appearing on his lips. He extended his palm and struck out. The heavenly god's law fragment coiled around the palm and clashed with the incoming saber. The essence of these two different powers was extremely different. It was like a stone and an egg. Perhaps the difference in size was not large, but the essence was completely different. The result of the collision between the two was naturally the shattering of the egg. With a huge boom, the oncoming saber light shattered. The heavenly deity's palm knocked Ziqin's saber away and landed on his chest. With another boom, Ziqin coughed up blood and was sent flying. A terrifying power entered his body, destroying his life force. In his world, a dozen or so mountains collapsed and several rivers dried up. His vitality was instantly drained. In the outside world, Ziqin was sent flying. However, his mind was extremely clear. He was not dead. The heavenly deity's attack had not killed him. A hint of joy appeared in his heart. In fact, he had even filtered the new information in his mind. If the heavenly deity's attack was limited to this, then he would be able to block at least 10 more attacks. With Heavenbreaker, he could block 10 attacks from the heavenly deity without dying. Naturally, he would not die. Whoosh! In another direction, the space was distorted. The Netherworld clone flew out from it. As soon as he appeared, the Netherworld power around him surged wildly. Then, it turned into a giant Netherworld beast and tried to devour the heavenly deity. The Netherworld opened its mouth. It was as if a gap had opened in the sky. Countless rule-bending powers descended from the sky. "Destroy." The heavenly deity smiled coldly and said one word. It was as if his words were the law. Boom! The Netherworld beast's body exploded. The clone coughed up blood and was sent flying. It was not that the clone was not strong enough. However, as long as he was in this world, he had to abide by the rules of this world. Under these rules, the Netherworld beast could not defeat the heavenly deity. Naturally, there was no way he could win. This was just like when he fought with the Sword Servant. The Netherworld beast had already devoured the Sword Servant, but could not refine him because of the rules. Although he was Ziqin's clone, he was not a defiant. Therefore, he could not violate the rules of this world. Whoosh! His figure kept retreating. The Netherworld clone disappeared. Facing the heavenly deity, his true body with the defiant rules still had a chance. However, he had no chance at all. Ziqin charged again. The long saber in his hand slashed down again. The saber light shattered. Ziqin's body was sent flying again. Seeing that 2 attacks had failed to kill his opponent, a hint of surprise appeared in the heavenly deity's eyes. Die. His words were the law. Waves of power with strange rules fell on Ziqin's body, trying to forcibly extinguish his soul. Buzz. On Ziqin's body, The power of the defiant rules flowed and dispelled the mysterious power. The level of the defiant rules could not surpass the heavenly deity rules. However, at this moment, the high quality of the defiant rules was fully displayed. After exchanging several blows with the heavenly god, dozens of mountains in Zichen's world were destroyed, and many rivers formed from spiritual energy had dried up. Chapter 32:18. Heavenbreaker appeared in Zichen's world and directly broke through the space sealed by the heavenly gods. He then left with Zichen. After leaving the sealed space, Zichen could once again perform long-distance teleportation. He took Li Ai and the others with him and teleported away. The turbulent energy settled, and the heavenly god's figure appeared. He looked at Zichen, who had disappeared, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face. That guy was actually able to block his attack and not die. This was truly shocking. However, his opponent was only a divine king. Although it was a little troublesome to kill him, he could still kill him. Moreover, he clearly saw that his opponent had been injured in the previous exchange. Zichen teleported to another place. At this moment, his face was clearly filled with excitement. This was because he had never thought that he would be able to fight against a heavenly god. This was a heavenly god, the most powerful being in the immortal realm. However, there was also something wrong. When he had faced Sandro, his opponent was already ridiculously powerful. He didn't have the courage to fight back at all. If Sandro wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping over his hand. Now, he could actually exchange a few blows with a heavenly god. Could it be that heavenly gods were like this? Heavenbreaker, who was standing at the side and constantly waiting to break through the sealed space, glanced at Zichen and guessed his thoughts. If you compare the laws of nature to water, then a drop of water is also a law. A bowl of water is also a law. The excited Zichen instantly came to his senses. Then, realization dawned on him. So that was how it was. The fragments of laws from before weren't complete. Many of them had been obliterated by the heavenly wind of annihilation. They were equivalent to the laws of nature of a drop of water. However, Sandro and the others had complete heavenly god's laws. This was different. Not long after, the heavenly god caught up again. The two sides exchanged a few blows, and Zichen fled. With Heavenbreaker's help, the sealed space couldn't trap him at all. Moreover, his battle prowess wasn't weak, so he didn't fear the heavenly god. Of course, the two sides couldn't fight for a long time. Otherwise, he would die. In the following period of time, many of the gods in this abandoned land learned that a new heavenly god had appeared. At the same time, they also learned that this heavenly god was hunting down a divine king but couldn't kill him. In fact, this divine king could even exchange blows with the heavenly god. This news wouldn't be believable if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, because it was too inconceivable. Even many of the Protoss who saw it with their own eyes found it hard to believe. Deity kings and heavenly deities were not existences on the same level. How could the two of them fight against each other? This situation was perfectly verified for a very long time. The heavenly deity glanced at the celestial being. That celestial being's body stiffened, and with a loud bang, he died. This was the true difference between a deity king and a heavenly deity. The chase had been going on for a long time, probably more than a few months. During this period of time, the two sides fought many times. Every time, Zichen would escape. Celestial could only helplessly chase after him. He had already used his strongest abilities, but he could not trap his opponent at all. That exotic beast that could break through space was extremely troublesome. After another round of pursuit, Zichen stopped and looked at the heavenly deity who was chasing after him. What will it take for you to stop? Either you die, or I die, the heavenly deity coldly said. Zichen thought about it seriously and said, then it's better for you to die. Behind him, black wind appeared. With a rumbling sound, the heaven annihilation wind swept over. Sensing this heaven annihilation wind, the heavenly deity's expression changed slightly. If you choose to enter the heaven annihilation wind to commit suicide, that's fine too. The heaven annihilation wind was getting closer and closer, moving this space. At this moment, Zichen chose to teleport, so he would be affected. However, he still did not move and looked at the heavenly deity in front of him. A hint of ridicule flashed in the heavenly deity's eyes. The heaven annihilation wind approached. The heavenly deity stretched out his hand and sent out a palm. The palm instantly arrived beside Zichun, shattering the void where he was. When the palm was sent out, the heavenly deity's figure flashed into the distance. The power of the heaven annihilation wind was extremely terrifying. Even a heavenly deity could not resist it. At the moment when the heavenly deity attacked, Heaven Breaker broke through space and brought Zichun away. At this point, Zichun understood one point. The heaven annihilation wind here should be the same as the black wind in the abyss. Even the heavenly deity did not dare to casually step into it. The heaven annihilation wind whistled forward, leaving behind a ruined scene. However, in the blink of an eye, Zichun appeared in the ruined scene left behind by the heaven annihilation wind. He was the first to arrive here. Clearly, he was looking for the heavenly deity's nomological fragment. Soon, many other members of the divine clan arrived and joined in the search. A moment later, the heavenly deity came again. Run! Some god race members roared in fear and fled without hesitation. During this period, they had already formed a habit. They knew that if they did not escape quickly, they would soon die in the hands of the heavenly deity. When the heavenly deity appeared, Zichun flashed away. Boom! At the place where he was originally standing, a palm struck down. Inside, a heavenly deity's nomological fragment shattered into nothingness. The heavenly deity did not speak. His figure flashed and disappeared. The pursuit was still ongoing. Under such circumstances, Zichun could only ensure that he did not die. It was completely impossible for him to obtain the heavenly deity's nomological fragment. In the end, after this pursuit continued for a long time, Zichun had no choice but to make a new choice. He could either leave this world or find a way to become a heavenly deity. Zichun stood in the void, surrounded by endless spatial power. Only Heaven Breaker could travel freely. If Zichun was alone, he would quickly get lost. There are heavenly deities here. We have no chance at all. Li Ai and Xingqian stood to the side. Are we going to just go back like this? Zichun frowned, his expression ugly. The heavenly deities here could not kill him, but that did not mean that the heavenly deities of the god realm could not kill him. Last time, Sandro had let him go. If he returned empty-handed, there would not be a second chance. Xingqian and the others stood there in silence. Ever since they came to this world, the four of them seemed to be in a different state. Do you have anything to say? Heaven Breaker looked at Xingqian and the others. He had long since noticed that there was something wrong with them. Xingqian hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice, "If you are unwilling, then let's make a bet." Bet? What kind of bet? Zichun looked at Xingqian in confusion. Up until now, the laws of heaven and earth that suppress power have never disappeared. This is the main reason why you are unable to become a heavenly deity. Now, let's make a bet. Let's bet on a place where the laws of heaven and earth do not exist. Xingqian said, "When we get there, I have a way to make you a heavenly deity." Xingqian's tone was very firm, but Zichun was still confused. How difficult was it to become a heavenly deity? How could it be so easy to break through? However, he had known Xingqian for a long time. He was usually a man of few words, so he definitely would not joke about something like this. "Where's that place?" Zichun asked. "In the heavenly wind." Xingqian's answer gave Zichun a fright. Chapter 32:19. Xingqian's words had a huge impact on Zichun. Even heavenly gods would die if they encountered the heavenly wind of annihilation. Xingqian actually said that there was an opportunity to become a heavenly god inside. How was this possible? Being stared at by Zichun, Xingqian smiled awkwardly and said, "Of course, I said that this is a gamble. There's a chance of success, and there's also a chance of failure. It doesn't seem possible, right?" Zichun smiled bitterly and said, "Even if there's no suppression of heaven and earth in that space, how can we enter?" Xingqian said, "If that's what you're worried about, then don't worry. We have a way to block the heavenly wind of annihilation and protect you." Zichun was very surprised. He didn't think that Xingqian and the others would have such a method. No wonder the four of them insisted on coming here. Even if we enter, how can we break through without the help of heavenly god laws? Zichen said, this method won't work. Xing said solemnly, if, and I'm saying if, there really isn't any suppression of heaven and earth after we enter, we have a way to help you become a heavenly god. Zichen was stunned upon hearing this. Xing, who had been silent all this time, seemed to have become very confident this time. Xing changed the topic and said, however, we can only block the heavenly wind of annihilation for you once. If there's still suppression of heaven and earth after we enter, then there's nothing we can do. Of course, the possibility of this is not high. I feel that the chance of success is as high as 80 or even 90%. Xing had already anticipated all kinds of dangers. Even so, there was still an 80 to 90% chance of success. This was undoubtedly feasible. However, looking at Xing serious expression, it was clear that there was still a big problem. What are you worried about? Zichen asked. If you can't resist the heavenly wind of annihilation even after you become a heavenly god, then only death awaits you. Xing said solemnly, this is what we're worried about. If you become a heavenly god but die in the heavenly wind of annihilation, in that case, our gamble this time will naturally be a complete loss. This is the biggest problem. Then, Xing looked at Heavenbreaker. Heavenbreaker shook his head and said, the heavenly wind of annihilation is extremely special. I can't penetrate it with my current strength. It could destroy all space and even all power. Furthermore, I don't think the four of you are capable of blocking the heavenly wind and allowing Zichen to enter the core. Xing sighed and said, to tell you the truth, with Zichen's uniqueness, it's impossible for him to refine a heavenly god law fragment. What? Zichen's expression changed as he looked at Xing. Your identity is special. Even if you obtain the heavenly god's law fragment, you won't be able to refine it. However, we did not stop you in the beginning because both Li AI and your doppelganger could use it, Xing said. What exactly do you know? Zichen looked at Xing. Xing said, only when you are free from the control of the laws of this world can you become a god. This is your only path. Previously, we did not stop you because we hoped that there would be a god to help you. But from the looks of it, it seemed impossible. Perhaps in the entire world, including the life stars, the only place that is not restricted by the laws of heaven and earth is the space in the heavenly wind of annihilation. Zichen said, in other words, I don't have a choice? Xing said, if you want to become a god, that is indeed the case. Of course, we can leave. We don't have to take this risk. Leave? Then where can we go? Zichen smiled bitterly and said, back to the life star? With my identity, if nothing changes, I will probably be killed soon, right? After I die, the others will not survive. Countless creatures will die, and a new cycle will begin. Zichen knew very well what the life star was like in the past. It was a world where even core origin realm experts could become old monsters. It was a world where breaking through to the heaven realm was an extravagant hope. The laws of heaven and earth were infinitely suppressed. The god clan in the god world regarded the creatures on the life star as ants. Because of his appearance and his intimidating power, the life star had broken the barriers of the laws again and again. Eventually, it had become a world that could resist the god world. However, if he didn't move forward, everything on the life star was like a bubble that would disappear shortly. He would die, and so would his friends. Rather than waiting for the unknown death and destruction, it was better to take a risk. This was the choice Zichen had often made during his journey. His road ahead had never been smooth sailing. Without hesitating for a long time, Zichen said, then let's take a risk. You have to think carefully, said Xing. I'm clear. If I die, you guys leave this world and return to the life star. Take the others and leave. Find a safe place to live. Under Heavenbreaker's guidance, Zichen returned to this world one more time. Heavenbreaker didn't stop Zichen because he understood that Zichen's destiny was to fight for a future. The god of heaven in this world suddenly lost his perception of Zichen. This made him feel strange. Did the other party leave this world? Of course, it was impossible. If the God King could leave this world, someone would have done so long ago. Indeed, not long after, he sensed Zichen's aura again. A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He thought that the other party must have used some secret technique. Thus, he continued his pursuit. After a while, he saw Zichen again. This time, the other party didn't run away. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Just as he was about to take action, a voice came from the front. "Don't be hasty. I plan to leave this world." "Oh?" The god of heaven looked at him, squinting. A black light appeared behind him. The vanishing wind was coming. "I'm going there to check," said Zichen. "Perhaps there's a powerful force there." The god of heaven smiled. "You've made a wise choice. Very well, I won't kill you for now." He was well aware of the power of the vanishing wind. Even he, a god of heaven, couldn't survive in there, let alone a mere god-king. Xingqian and the others walked towards Zichen. Li Ai and Heaven Breaker stood there, while Zichen's netherworld clone hid in the void. Are they going to die in a group? Seeing Xingqian and the others, the god of heaven's eyes rippled. His gaze fell on Brilliant Light and Mingyu. It would be good if the man died, but it was clearly not worth it for the two beauties to die. However, he didn't stop them. This was because there was another beauty nearby. At the same time, it was also because the vanishing wind was approaching. Even he would have to pay a price. In the distance, the figures of the other god tribe cultivators appeared. When they saw this scene, they were stunned. "Are you guys going to be all right?" Zichen asked as he looked at Xingqian. Of course. Xingqian and the others came to Zichen's side. Their hands began to form seals. Then, the power of the sun, moon, star, and lightning appeared from their bodies. They gathered in front of them, forming a huge defensive light barrier. When the god of heaven saw this, he knew that Zichen was really going to enter the vanishing wind. Thus, he was even more shocked. However, the sneer on his face didn't decrease in the slightest. No one could survive in the vanishing wind. This was an eternal truth. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.